Chapter 163. When the three of them entered, Midnight Dining Hall's boss, Tan Siming, was scrubbing the dishes. The long knife scar on his face and the bitter expression on his face made him look especially ferocious in the dim light. Although it wasn't time for customers to visit yet, the boss was already preparing to receive them at midnight. As for the song, Old Boys, sung by Tang Yuning, it had been played on an obsolete old-fashioned radio next to the boss. In this day and age, radio stations were no longer very popular, but that couldn't stop people's feelings for radio programs. So although there weren't many radio programs, there were still people doing them. Among them, one had to mention Zhang Yi, the radio's top presenter. He wasn't just a radio presenter, he had a broadcasting background, but was also a very famous filmmaker. He had once written a book about his experiences called I Am a Big Star, and the entire book was filled with all kinds of lyrics, poems and stories. It always felt like he was showing off his knowledge. As a veteran online novelist, Father Wang also defined the nature of this book as hydrology. Boss Tan was still washing the dishes. When they came in, he almost reflexively pointed at the menu on the wall and said unhurriedly, "That's all there is on the menu. But if you want to eat something else, I can make it for you." After all, apart from Wang Ling, this was the first time grenade throwing and Song Qingshu had come here. Song Qingshu thought for a bit and felt that it wouldn't be polite to interrogate them as if they were criminals without ordering anything, so he asked for 3 large bowls of Laotan pickled cabbage beef noodles. He even took the initiative to settle the bill. 1 large bowl was 20 yuan, and 3 large bowls were 60 yuan. Song Qingshu straightaway threw out a 100 yuan bill, and even waved his hand at Boss Tan to tell him to keep the change. Nouveau riche was capricious. In fact, grenade-throwing senior Immortal had been using Song Qingshu as a human ATM for the past 2 days. This guy had sold off all the assets he had accumulated over the years at Immortal Castle, and now had so much money that he didn't know how to spend it. "Thank you." When the boss collected the money, he finally looked up and saw Wang Ling among the 3 people, and his expression instantly changed. Aren't you that 33 yuan and 70 cents creative genius?" Wang Ling, Boss Tan still had an impression of Wang Ling. After all, he was the man who had sold the song, Old Boys, which had now spread all over Huaxiu Nation. Such a popular song, along with the lyrics and music, had been sold for 33 yuan and 70 cents, the same as 2 medium bowls of beef noodles. "Boss, do you know this brother of mine?" Grenade-throwing senior Immortal asked as he looked at the boss. "He and his father came to my shop to order beef noodles before." Boss Tan answered. Grenade-throwing senior Immortal's heart trembled. It turned out that senior Wang had also been to this shop. It seems like this shop is not simple. "This song, Old Boys, you've all heard it, right?" After thinking for a while, Boss Tan simply told him about the song, Old Boys. Grenade-throwing senior Immortal and Song Qingshu were greatly shaken when they heard this. "Brother Ling, you can write songs?" Wang Ling nodded shamelessly, his face expressionless. Because from a theoretical point of view, he was just a carrier of songs. At the mention of Old Boys, Boss Tan's resentful expression deepened. "Previously, when Little Tang wasn't popular, he would always come to my shop. There was a time when he had to rely on me to help him survive in Songhai City. Now that he's popular, he hasn't been here for a long time." Speaking up to this point, Boss Tan smiled bitterly. "I was hoping that he would help me drum up some business. This is simply abandoning him after using him." Grenade-throwing senior Immortal shook his head. The boss had originally been depressed about this matter, but now that he had found someone to talk to, his mood instantly improved a lot. He looked at the previous boss and said, "By the way, why did you come to me at this hour?" Back to the topic at hand, Boss Tan wasn't a fool. It was written very clearly in his shop that it generally opened at midnight, but these 3 people had come to him at 7 or 8, and had even ordered 3 big bowls of beef noodles in one go. The most important thing was that they had even given him a tip. There was most likely something fishy going on here. Boss Tan had seen a lot of people over the years, and could sometimes guess what the customers in his shop were thinking just by looking at their expressions. Fortunately, Boss Tan was a straightforward person, and his attitude reassured grenade-throwing senior Immortal. He didn't try to hide anything, and with a flash of spirit light, he took out an illustration of the stone ghost mask which he had prepared in advance. Boss Tan, have you seen this before? Boss Tan cupped his chin as he gazed at the illustration, his expression gradually turning serious. He then stared at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and asked a little excitedly, "Where did you find this mask?" When Boss Tan said this, the weight in everyone's hearts was instantly lifted. Sure enough, the owner of this shabby restaurant, Boss Tan, had something to do with the stone ghost mask. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal answered truthfully, "Brother Ling bought the mask we have on some treasure for 5 yuan, and it even included free shipping." Boss Tan, if you know more about this mask, please tell us the truth. Please tell us the truth. As far as we know, there should be 2 stone ghost masks. This is a twin magical weapon. And now, someone is trying to use these 2 masks to do evil. Saying this, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stepped forward and gripped Boss Tan's hand tightly. "Boss Tan, it's up to you to save the world." Boss Tan stared at the illustrated handbook for a while, then shook his head and replied, "Although I'm very surprised as to how on earth you found me, I don't know. But I'm sorry to tell you that I'm not the only one who made these 2 masks. When I was young, I made them with the little girl from the neighborhood." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Made of mud? But there's primordium black crystal in this mask. It's the hardest metal in the entire universe. Boss Tan thought carefully for a moment before saying, "Oh, we did indeed find some black crystals in the mud at the time, so we just put them in." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Song Qingshu, and Wang Ling, the scene fell into a dead silence. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took a deep breath. "So, Boss Tan, you're not a smith?" Boss Tan shrugged. "I never said I was. The girl was the one who made the masks, I just cooperated with her in making them. In the end, it was also the dry mud she baked." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, then, does Boss Tan still have the contact information for that mud-playing little girl? Boss Tan, it's been so many years, we haven't been in contact for a long time. But I still remember this girl's name. Maybe you can investigate based on this lead. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, what's her name? Boss Tan, Nuwa. Chapter 164. Based on the information Song Qingshu had provided, it had taken Little Black 2 days and 2 nights to obtain this lead. He had thought that there would be significant progress, but before this step could be taken, the lead had been cut off again. Even he felt vaguely annoyed. Now, where to find this mud-playing little girl called Nuwa had become a thorny problem. Of course, if he hadn't been restricted by the Dao Talisman seal, he could have used her aura to track down and lock onto a target, but that would have caused the global power grid to go down, which wasn't an outcome he wanted to see. It was very clear that the stone ghost mask was a very tricky problem. Boss Tan looked at the 3 distressed people and was deep in thought. After a moment, he took out an iron box from his drawer and gave it to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "Boss Tan, what's this?" "There's a hawthorn tree seed inside," Boss Tan replied. "This is a promise I made to that girl when I was little. I'll find a place to plant the seed, and as long as it blossoms and bears fruit one day, that girl will appear under it." Will this really work? It had been so many years, he probably couldn't even remember the names of his kindergarten classmates anymore. Those promises he had made when he was little really didn't sound very reliable. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal recalled how he had boasted every day when he was little that he would marry all the girls in kindergarten, but now, he was still a single dog. "There's no other way, I can only try everything I can." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal opened the iron box, picked up the hawthorn tree seed inside, and sighed. By the time they returned to Wenxian Garden with the hawthorn tree seed, it was already close to midnight. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Song Qingshu had gone to confirm a few things. They had heard from Loopy Toad that Immortal Castle had sent 2 people to investigate during the day. Even with his eyes closed, Song Qingshu knew that they had to have been sent by the lady of the castle to confirm whether he was dead or not. Unfortunately, Loopy Toad had simply and roughly flushed them down the toilet, and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal Castle hadn't been able to ask them for more details. Otherwise, they would have definitely been able to get a lot of little-known secrets out of these two people. Be careful in the next 2 days. Those people definitely know that you're not dead. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal told Song Qing-shu as he planted the hawthorn seed in his backyard. Don't worry, Senior. Senior Wang hasn't taken back his long johns yet. Song Qing-shu replied. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a sweat. Most enchanted magic treasures have a time limit, and Brother Ling will probably enchant them again regularly. I don't think you have much time left with the long johns you're wearing. So, when it's time to run, you have to run, understand? Song Qing-shu nodded like a chick pecking at rice. Yes, of course, Senior. I haven't returned Senior Wang's flip-flops. If I were to run now, I would be faster than a reporter. Song Qing-shu, speaking of which, are these hawthorn seeds really useful? Who knows? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal patted the spirit soil in his hand and sighed slightly. According to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's calculations, it would take at least 5 days for the seeds to sprout, given the power of the spirit earth and the current cultivation speed. It would take at least half a month for it to grow into a hawthorn tree. The most important thing was whether that girl called Nuwa would show up as promised. Staring at the spirit earth, the two of them sank into deep thought, feeling a severe pain in the ass. It was June 3rd on Friday in the 6th week of the semester. That morning, some families were happy and some were sad. For the sake of the military training, the boys had all shaved their hair to a crew cut. Some of the more heroic ones, like Super Chin, had been straightaway shaved bald by the hairdresser. Holding his head, Super Chin wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. He had clearly told the hairdresser that he only needed to trim his hair, even if it was a crew cut, he had to look handsome. Who would have thought that the hairdresser would, in the blink of an eye, trim and embroider him into a bald wuku? Super Chin felt that he must have owed the hairdresser a huge sum of money in his previous life. He was really bloody unlucky. When Teacher Pan walked into the classroom, it was actually a little noisy as everyone was discussing hairstyles. But today, Teacher Pan uncharacteristically didn't get angry. Instead, she silently put her handouts on the lectern and admired the boys' crew cuts with the girls around her. As a man, he should feel refreshed like this. How good was this? As a pioneer teacher at number 60 High, Teacher Pan had led many batches of elite students. The most impressive thing about Teacher Pan was her strict teaching style and class rules. She was a person who liked to follow the rules, and anyone who got to know her for a long time would have a deep impression of her obsessive-compulsive disorder. Now that all the boys had shaved their crew cut, Teacher Pan's mood was as relaxed as if she had been constipated for a long time and had finally been released. While Teacher Pan was rejoicing over the boys' new looks in Grade 1, Class 3, on the other side, the general administration of 100 schools in Songhai City was in an uproar. Jua sat at his desk with a little bitter resentment. Ever since number 60 High had been attacked by Shadow Stream killers, he hadn't been able to let it go. Thus, as soon as he took office, he had increased the vigilance of all the high schools within the jurisdiction of the general administration of 100 schools in Songhai City. This was to prevent heretics from rising again. Jua didn't want to make the slightest slip-up while he was still in office. The official culture of cultivators was far more complicated than ordinary people could imagine. Number 60 High was his alma mater. If he couldn't even protect it, it would inevitably become a topic of gossip and ridicule. It was almost time for number 60 High's military training, so Jua had secretly increased the security at number 60 High in the last few days. Unfortunately, Jua received bad news at this juncture. The younger sister of the master of Shadow Stream, who had been captured at number 59 high school previously, had broken out of prison. Songhai City's Class 1 prison was an important place for serious criminals deployed by the Cultivation Police Department. A lot of famous criminals had been imprisoned here. The criminal from Fury Cultivation University who had poisoned his roommate had been locked up here for a very long time, and was finally executed in accordance with the law. This incident had alarmed national leaders, and it just so happened that members of the Central Cultivation Inspection Team were in Songhai City. Secretary Dakang had rushed to the scene almost immediately. To be honest, it was quite inconceivable that someone had broken out of the National Class 1 prison for serious criminals. It had to be noted that all the cultivators who had been sent to prison had special sealing spells cast on them, and the handcuffs they wore were also specially made to restrict the output of their abilities. Furthermore, there was a huge sealing array at the bottom of the prison, which had a radius of 10,000 li coupled with the high walls that even an attacking giant wouldn't be able to cross. Breaking out of the prison was simply nonsense. After Secretary Dakang arrived at the scene, the Cultivation Police Department had already dispatched the Major Crimes Investigation Unit to investigate the situation. The only good news that could be confirmed at the moment was that the criminal hadn't left Songhai City's high-security prison. It was just that the way he had escaped was a little inconceivable. The other party had actually dismantled the steel plate under the bed and used only a fork for instant noodles to forcibly dig out a passage. Chapter 165. It was really inconceivable that an instant noodle fork would actually be able to dig such a long tunnel in a national level 1 prison for serious criminals. With her spirit energy completely restricted, how had the girl managed to break through the heavy reinforced steel plates made from strengthened immortal crystals? That was one problem. After breaking through the steel plates, how had she transported the bricks and soil out? That was another problem. Jua arrived not long after Secretary Dakang. When he arrived at the prison, he could clearly feel dizzy. Seeing this, the warden, who had been waiting at the main entrance to receive him, hurriedly hung a pendant around Jua's neck, and his dizziness was alleviated. "What's this?" The warden explained. "Director Jua, this is a resistance crystal developed by Huaxiao's Cultivation Academy of Science. When you wear it, it can restrict the power of the magic array beneath the prison. Each staff member working in the prison has one." Hearing this, Jua nodded. The magic array in the prison was really too powerful. As soon as he stepped in, he almost couldn't breathe, and his overall symptoms were similar to hypoglycemia, chest tightness, shortness of breath, rapid heartbeat, and dizziness. But the serious criminals locked up here not only had to face the suppression of the magic array, but also the restraining power of the special handcuffs on their wrists. Judging from all the conditions, breaking out of this prison was a complete joke. This incident was a little unexpected, but fortunately, we discovered it in time. There are signal transmitters embedded in the prisoner's handcuffs, and according to the signal source, the prisoner is still hiding in the prison. The warden wanted to cry a little. If the prison break was successful this time, he would probably have to directly go GG and go home to retire and farm. Jua was directly brought to the crime scene by the warden. Songhai Cultivation Police's Major Crime Investigation team had already arrived, and they all surrounded the entrance to the prison from which the girl had broken out. At first glance, Jua saw Secretary Dakang's figure in a windbreaker in the vast crowd. "Little Juazi, you're finally here." When the old secretary saw Jua, his frown instantly brightened. "It was all thanks to your efforts that we were able to capture this person last time, Jua. I already have a basic understanding of the situation. If you have any questions, you can ask me directly. If you have any other thoughts, you can also tell me. Everyone here will listen to your commands. We have to do our best to arrest and bring this criminal to justice in the shortest time possible before he actually escapes from prison." The old secretary patted Jua on the shoulder. "Little Juazi, it's up to you. I believe that if you can catch her once, you can catch her again." Jua already didn't know what to say. The most important thing was that he himself was in a state of confusion regarding the previous two situations. How did she escape? The old secretary replied, "According to our initial observation, the criminal did use a spoon made from instant noodles to dig a tunnel to escape. Although the tunnel wasn't deep, considering the criminal's identity as a shadow stream killer, he was proficient in the bone shrinking skill. He could use this small hole to escape. As for the steel plate at the bottom, the prisoner used a corrosive liquid to burn through it." "Corrosive liquid?" Jua was astonished. "Isn't there a full body examination before entering prison? How did he bring it in?" Speaking up to this point, the warden rubbed his temples in pain. "If our guess is correct, the criminal probably hid the tool in his crotch. This is a blind spot for inspection." Jua. "Crotch?" The old secretary nodded sternly. This speculation sounds a little nonsensical, but it's actually very reasonable. Actually, it's easier to hide things in the crotch. Even a grenade can be hidden there. What's a small bottle of corrosive liquid to it? Ah joie, 2 hours had passed since Jiang Luiying had escaped from the prison cell. The outside world was calm and peaceful, but Songhai's level 1 prison was already in an uproar. No one could say for sure what would happen in 2 hours. The longer it dragged on, the higher the chances that the criminal would actually escape. As a criminal wanted by the vicious assassination organization Shadow Stream, there was no guarantee that the other party wouldn't do anything harmful to society if he was allowed to escape from prison. Jiang Luiying had crawled out of a haystack 3 kilometers away from the prison's main building. When she crawled out, she was still holding an instant noodles fork and handcuffed. Tied to the fork was an armor-piercing talisman, which was why Jiang Luiying had been able to dig through the soil as effortlessly as if she were digging pudding. When she broke out of the ground, the effect of the armor-piercing talisman had already disappeared, and the instant the effect of the armor-piercing talisman disappeared, the instant the effect of the armor-piercing talisman disappeared, the instant it tragically broke into 2 pieces. Oh, that was right. Jiang Luiying had also taken this armor-piercing talisman out of her crotch. It's all thanks to the escape package elder sister prepared for me. Jiang Luiying held a glass bottle the size of a finger in her hand, which was stuffed with all kinds of hoi poi capsules, which contained all kinds of magic treasures that could be used to escape capture. Jiang Luiying, on the other hand, had kept them in her crotch all this time. Jiang Luiying could have escaped a long time ago, but unfortunately she had been knocked unconscious. By the time she had woken up, she was already in prison. It had taken some time, but fortunately, she had managed to escape in the end. Lying in the haystack, Jiang Luiying stared at the bottle in her hand. She gritted her teeth hatefully and pounded the ground in grief and indignation. Those damn cats and high school students, they made me suffer so much here, just you wait. Jiang Luiying narrowed her eyes, a hint of malice in them. Her top priority now was to think of a way to escape from here. Jiang Luiying was well aware that although she had escaped from the cell, she hadn't truly escaped the prison. Furthermore, she had a hunch that she was being watched. I have to think of a way to undo these damn handcuffs first. After calming down, the girl stared at the handcuffs in deep thought. These handcuffs were made of stainless steel. The material was very special, and had the ability to suppress spirit energy. Coupled with the restrictive array at the foot of the prison, the spirit energy she could now use was so minuscule that it wasn't even worth mentioning. However, Jiang Luiying still thought of another way. She took out a hoi poi capsule from the glass bottle, which contained the last armor-piercing talisman. Taking it out of the capsule, the girl stuck it to her 36D chest, as if she had cut off all means of retreat. Then, she took a deep breath. She placed her hands flat on a rock and tried to put as much distance between them as possible. After that, she lifted her upper body and flung it violently, boom. Chapter 166. In ancient times, there was a chest weapon that could shatter boulders, and today, there was a chest weapon that could shatter shackles. Looking at the shattered handcuffs, Jiang Luiying suddenly felt a sense of heroism in her heart. She felt that she had accomplished an unprecedented feat. The main reason was that this armor-piercing talisman was just too useful. This was an armor-piercing talisman which had been specially drawn by her elder sister, and was more vicious and violent than the ones sold on the market. That was why it could generate enough force to directly shatter the handcuffs. Without the shackles of the handcuffs, Jiang Luiying felt that her spirit energy had recovered significantly. Although the magic array under the prison had the ability to restrict spirit energy, it was still very difficult to control it. But over the past few days, Jiang Luiying had gradually adapted to this kind of oppressive environment. She had 2 golden cores inside her body, which was like having 2 CPUs at the same time. Her spirit energy worked faster than an ordinary person's, and even in such a restrictive environment, she could still exert half of her strength. This had played an important role in her escape from the prison. Without the help of the prison resistance crystal, it would be nonsense for an ordinary felon to escape from the prison's magic array and the handcuffs on their hands. But now, the girl felt that her chances of escaping were much higher. This prison was quite large, and she had just escaped from the main building. His current location was a training area 3 kilometers behind the main building. It was a small forest. It had originally been a place for prisoners to exercise, but now it had become a hiding place for Jiang Luiying to escape. If she dashed out so brazenly now, the prison officers who were already searching nearby would immediately find her. What Jiang Luiying needed to do now was to use the invisibility talisman in the escape package to find the sewer that led outside the prison as soon as possible. Then, while the armor-piercing talisman's effect was still active, she would use the chest weapon to smash a hole in the barrier outside the prison. Otherwise, there was no way she could break through the prison's high walls, which were ridiculously thick. Now that things had come to this, Jiang Luiying had no other choice. If she wanted to escape from here, she could only make one last attempt. In the forest, the girl gritted her teeth, circulated her spirit energy, and stuck the invisibility talisman on her body, then swiftly flew off in one direction. Half an hour later, the prison guards patrolling outside found the broken handcuffs on the ground, and Secretary Sun and Audiobook quickly led a group of people to the scene. When the warden saw the handcuffs that had been reduced to pieces, his heart trembled with fear, and a distressed expression appeared on his face. How did the other party destroy these handcuffs made of special materials under the restriction of the ceiling circle and the handcuffs? Since the enemy has the ability to escape, destroying the handcuffs should be expected. Secretary Dakong gazed at the shards of the handcuffs and pondered a little. But what on earth could have such destructive power? Little Zhuozi, do you have any ideas? Zhuo was at a loss. The old secretary continued to speculate. The handcuffs of the first-class prisons in the country are all made of extremely dense and pure dark steel. This girl can actually cause such great damage to the handcuffs. This is enough to prove that they must have some kind of weapon of mass destruction on them. Warden, old secretary, do you think that this prisoner will harm the other felons in our prison? That's not it. Secretary Sun shook his head. This girl's #1 goal now is to escape, so the weapon of mass destruction she's carrying is very likely to be used to destroy the prison's high walls or the barrier outside the walls. As soon as he finished speaking, a deafening roar traveled into everyone's ears. The warden held a walkie-talkie in his hand. Hurry up and check. What's that sound? Very quickly, several prison guards on the other end of the walkie-talkie reporting. We found the target. The target is destroying the barrier. Warden, then hurry up and subdue the target. Prison guard, reporting. The target is moving very fast and seems to have used an invisibility talisman. We're using a scanner to locate the target. Warden, after locating the target, immediately seize the weapon and arrest her. Seize the weapon. Outside the high-class prison's barrier, the girl's figure was exposed under the scanner. A group of prison guards stared at the girl who was holding her chest and smashing the barrier with all her might, and couldn't help falling into deep thought. It was June 4th on Saturday in the 6th week of the semester. When Wang Ling got up in the morning and turned on the TV, he noticed that the same news was being repeated on all the channels. At around 1800 hours last night, a felon from Songhai's high-class prison destroyed the barrier and successfully escaped. Wang Ling was surprised to discover that this girl was actually the person who had been captured at number 59 high school back then. According to the relevant investigation by the cultivation police, it had been confirmed that this girl was in fact the younger sister of the master of Shadow Stream. It was precisely because of this identity that the girl hadn't gone through the judicial process at that time, and had been directly sent to Songhai First Prison to be locked up. Wang Ling calculated carefully that it had already been 3 weeks, or almost a month, since the incident had happened. There are so many prison guards in the prison, but they can't even keep an eye on a girl. The old man sat in front of the TV and drank some vegetable porridge before directly turning it off. Dad, why did you turn off the TV? Father Wang was watching happily, because he realized that this girl's breasts were quite big. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that Father Wang was more curious about how this girl had broken out of prison, and wanted to see the follow-up news report. The old man shook his head. Even if the news doesn't continue broadcasting, I can probably guess what's going to happen. Based on the usual news routine, when something this big happens, the relevant department leader will most likely shift the blame to someone else. If you don't believe me, I'll turn it on again for you to see." The old man turned the TV back on. Coincidentally, the news was at the same time that the person in charge of Songhai First Prison was making a statement. Surrounded by cameras and microphones from reporters from all over the country, a prison warden who looked to be in his late 20s had a gloomy expression on his face. "I'm very sorry to have caused everyone to worry. Actually, the situation this time isn't as serious as we thought. We've already issued a national wanted order, and we've already found clues leading to the fugitive's escape. We'll immediately organize forces to arrest and bring the fugitive to justice." A female reporter wearing black-rimmed glasses asked, "Warden Liang, can you explain the main reason for the fugitive's escape this time?" "Actually, the mistake this time was that our prison used newcomers. These newcomers aren't very familiar with the job, so when the fugitive was taken into custody in the prison." Speaking up to this point, this Warden Liang lowered his head with a sorrowful expression. Speaking up to this point, this Warden Liang lowered his head with a sorrowful expression. "Yes, that's right. All of this is the fault of the temporary workers." Chapter 167. Just like that, the glorious temporary worker was once again implicated. Wang Ling knew that this was a common statement used by the relevant departments in Huaxiao Nation, just like the strong condemnation and protest of Huaxiao's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This set of rhetoric had been carefully designed, and it was suitable for all kinds of interview questions. Although the news of the girls' prison break was spreading like wildfire, there were very few news reports about it online. Wang Ling clicked on several news apps, and there were only a few comments on the relevant news reports. It was very obvious that this matter had been suppressed, just like Mother Wang's groping incident last time. Warden Liang had played it down on TV, but Wang Ling had a bad feeling looking at the news reports. His eyelids were twitching again, and this time, the disaster warning was actually 3 stars. Thus, although it was Saturday, Wang Ling was home and didn't go anywhere, he felt uneasy. The frequent twitching of his eyelids gave him a hint of anxiety. What would the jailbreak girl do after she got out of prison? Wang Ling lay on his back on his bed and crossed his arms as a pillow as he thought distractedly. It was clearly impossible for her to seek revenge on number 59 high school and number 60 high school now that she had escaped from prison. Most of the students in the school were on vacation. Even if they came looking for trouble, there were still so many teachers on duty who wouldn't give this shadow stream killer an opportunity to take advantage of. Looking for Wang Ming sounded even more unreliable. Huaxiao's top leaders all knew about the grudge between the strongest brain and this shadow stream girl. Once the news of her prison break got out, they would definitely send more people to protect Wang Ming. Then, the only person left to swiftly retaliate against in a short period of time was black charcoal. When a person had nowhere to vent their anger, they would naturally look for a soft persimmon to pinch. Wang Ling felt that Zheng Tan was now in a very dangerous situation. Wang Ling turned into a white Persian cat and once again appeared under that old willow tree in number 59 high school. Considering the urgency of the situation, Wang Ling had directly teleported over. Wang Ling carefully sensed his surroundings and realized that it was all quiet and there was no sound at all. He lay down at the mouth of the tree hole and sensed for a moment, but there wasn't the slightest trace of an aura inside. Whether it was the original chief of staff, Battalion 1 Commander the Monk, or Zheng Tan's cavalry battalion, infantry battalion and air force, none of them were here. Wang Ling opened his eyes and used the Heavenly Eye flashback spell. The scene in front of him started to flow backward, but he didn't capture any information. This proved that charcoal had left at least half an hour ago. What's more, they had turned out in full force. They brought along all the fellows in the cave and were fully armed. Even the Yadali cannon in the cave had disappeared. Where did they go? He was very worried about Zheng Tan's safety. Through his aura search, he could confirm that Zheng Tan and the others were already far away from Peiyuan district. It had been at least 12 hours since they left the tree hole, which was earlier than he had expected. Now, there was only one way to find Zheng Tan. In a mysterious laboratory on the border of Huaxiao Nation, a man in black tights was engrossed in research. In his hands were the blueprints for the Armstrong Cyclone Jet Armstrong cannon. Since the laboratory had been destroyed the last time, Little Black had been trying to restore this cannon which he had painstakingly developed. He was waiting for a clue from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, then he would carry the cannon to that bastard's house and directly blow it up. Little Black was in the middle of recalculating the cannon's firing speed when a hand suddenly pressed down on his shoulder, scaring him so much that he trembled all over. Who is it? This time, Little Black saw a youngster in a white short-sleeved shirt standing behind him. You are? Wang Ling directly revealed his identity telepathically. Little Black was astonished. You're Ling Jinren. This time, Wang Ling didn't have to deliberately disguise his face like last time, because the last time he had been here, he hadn't known about the relationship between Little Black and grenade throwing. Now that he knew that the other party was on his side, there was no need to disguise himself. To verify that he was the real Ling Jinren, Wang Ling even posted a photo of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Wang Ling had secretly taken it when he had been with grenade throwing. He had taken it to deal with this kind of situation in case he needed it. Looking at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's smiling face in the photo, which was as bright as a chrysanthemum, Little Black's doubts about the youngster's identity were completely dispelled. It was only when he was with Ling Jinren that this cultivation forum leader would smile like a fool. So it really is Ling Jinren, my apologies, my apologies. Little Black cupped his fists excitedly, so this was the big shot who was going to help him find that bastard who had destroyed the lab. He actually looked so young. What business do you have with me, Ling Jinren? Wang Ling didn't beat around the bush, and directly gave Little Black a sketch of Jingtan that he had prepared beforehand as well as the specific location of the willow tree. Can you find it? When Little Black saw the sketch of Jingtan, it instantly dawned on him. It turned out that Ling Jinren's cat had gone missing. But, why had it appeared in this strange location? Could it be that big shots in the cultivation world nowadays like to raise their pets freely? Out of politeness, Little Black didn't ask too many questions. Based on the coordinates Wang Ling had marked, Little Black easily located the willow tree's vicinity and successfully hacked into all the surveillance equipment nearby. This time, Wang Ling finally caught a clue. Jingtan and the others had set off at around 8:00 last night, and each cat had been covered with an invisibility talisman. As Wang Ling had guessed, they had left the tree hole with all their fellows. It was obvious that they were going to fight a team battle. Wang Ling's heavenly eye could clearly see Jingtan's black, confident face through the surveillance cameras. This guy was actually smiling. But what kind of team battle was it that was worth Jingtan mobilizing all its forces? While Wang Ling was worried, he was also a little curious. Little Black was indeed Little Black, as a computer network existence that could turn something rotten into a divine weapon. It was able to deduce Jingtan's final destination, Shanghai Dahuang International Airport, based on just a bit of Jingtan's whereabouts when it had set off. Airport, this time, whether it was Little Black or Wang Ling, both of them were utterly shocked. Little Black hacked into the airport ticketing system and investigated all the transaction records for that day. In the end, it discovered a set of rather strange data. After analyzing it, Little Black had an incredulous expression on its face. Ling Jinren, your cat is really too powerful. It actually chartered its own plane. Wang Ling was startled by Jingtan's actions. Chapter 168. Thanks to various coincidences, Jingtan and Wang Ling's incarnation of Immortal Meow had fought together in number 59 high school. After returning that day, Jingtan had started to drill its independent regiment day and night as if it had been injected with chicken blood. It had sent out several of its battalion commanders to expand its ranks and recruit soldiers everywhere. Now, Jingtan's subordinates alone already had the strength of 2 divisions of cats. Even its realm and strength had experienced unprecedented growth. In fact, all of this was thanks to Wang Ling. When it had shaken hands with Wang Ling for the last time, Jingtan had pulled its hand back to find that its palm had been stained with a few strands of white cat hair. The most amazing thing was that these strands of cat hair actually had the miraculous effect of condensing the spirit energy of heaven and earth. It was even more F***** effective than a high-level spirit gathering array. Just like that, from that day on, Jingtan's strength began to grow by leaps and bounds. In just one short month, it had actually reached the peak late golden core stage. As for Jingtan's operation this time, it had actually been premeditated. In this month, apart from cultivating, Jing Tan had also learned from stray cats about a secret stronghold suspected to be Shadow Stream's headquarters. At that time, Jing Tan had been thinking about this attack. Just yesterday, Jing Tan had received news that the Shadow Stream girl had escaped from prison. At that time, Jing Tan had felt that its chance had come. Jing Tan had decided to take advantage of the fact that this girl was still on her way to seek revenge on them to lead its army north and stab the enemy headquarters in the ass. Jinghua City, a neighboring city of Songhai City. This was the capital of Huaxiu Nation. No one would have thought that Shadow Stream's current headquarters would be on an unremarkable hill on the outskirts of the capital. It seems that Ing has already escaped successfully. The master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luiyue, frowned as she sat in a high-back chair and watched news reports on the prison break. Any news of her? Tell her not to make any further moves and to come back quickly. To avoid any more trouble. As she spoke, she turned her gaze to another figure next to her. It was an assassin in white with a golden armband and a dagger at his waist. His clothes were whiter than snow, and he looked like an immortal who had walked out of a painting. This person was called Immortal, and was one of Shadow Stream's gold-forged assassins. He was also their brains, and was stronger than Jiang Luiying. Don't worry, Lord. I've already sent someone to receive Miss Ing. Immortal had a well-thought-out plan and calmly replied, it's just that Miss Ing seems to still be a little indignant about what happened last time. After she shook off the prison guard's pursuit, she went to look for those cats to take revenge. Cat. Jiang Luiyue could vaguely sense that something was wrong. These cats clearly have very ordinary bloodlines, but their spiritual intelligence and realms are different from ordinary people's. They must have been taught by an expert. I think it's better not to provoke them. My lord, there's no need to worry. According to the information we've received, Miss Ing seems to have barged into nothing, Immortal replied softly. Barged in empty air? What do you mean? When Miss Ing came to that area to search, she didn't find any traces of cats. The cats seemed to have evacuated in advance. Evacuate? Jiang Luiyue frowned, feeling that things weren't as simple as they seemed. She didn't know why, but she had become very wary of cats recently, because not long ago, she had found a kitten that seemed to have lost its way near the top of the mountain. The strangest thing was that this mountain was a private, forbidden area which had been set up with a magic array. Even birds would detour around this place when passing by, so how had that cat gotten in? Jiang Luiyue pondered this deeply. This was the first time that Immortal had seen Jiang Luiyue so worried, and she couldn't help asking, what are you worried about, my lord? I'm worried that those cats might be plotting something. Plotting? Immortal laughed. My lord, are you worried that those cats will find this place and attack the headquarters? As soon as she said this, there was suddenly a tremendous explosion outside the hall. Where did that explosion come from? Immortal tilted her head. A Shadow Stream killer swiftly turned into a black shadow and appeared in front of Jiang Luiyue and Immortal. My lord, Lord Immortal. The foot of the mountain is under fire. Who's attacking the mountain? Immortal was shocked. It's a large group of cats. A large group of cats is climbing the mountain, they're armed with heavy weapons, and there are tens of thousands of them. It seems, they're going to attack the headquarters. Immortal. For some reason, Immortal's face hurt. Sure enough, there's something wrong with those cats. Jiang Luiyue grit her teeth. It was clear that these tens of thousands of cats had come prepared to attack the mountain with heavy weapons. Furthermore, the number of killers in the headquarters was very limited, so once they came under fire, her image as the master of Shadow Stream would completely collapse in the killer world. Immortal, immediately gather everyone to protect the headquarters, and during this period, don't come into contact with those cats. No matter what, we have to defend the headquarters. Yes, my lord, I'll arrange it right away. Immortal immediately nodded. This time, he finally realized how serious the situation was. Outside the hall, Immortal stood at the highest point and shook it lightly 3 times. Spirit light flashed in his hand, and a string of magic bells appeared. He recited a spell, and the magic bell started to vibrate rapidly. With him as the center, invisible sound waves spread out in all directions. Ringing the magic bells 3 times was Shadow Stream's highest level command to gather. 2 hours, can we hold out until then? Emoli felt a little worried as he sensed the vigorous cat army charging up the mountain at the foot of the mountain. Zheng Tan's attack on the mountain this time was completely independent and hadn't been reported to the headquarters. In fact, in recent years, there had been countless cases of Shadow Stream killers abusing cats, and they had long since become enemies with cats all over the country. Cats all over Huaxiao Nation were also looking for Shadow Stream's headquarters, and had been trying to organize forces to launch an attack on it. Not long ago, the coordinates of Shadow Stream's headquarters had circulated among the cats, but they hadn't been verified yet, and all the cats were waiting for further confirmation from the headquarters. But no one had expected that before the headquarters had finished verifying the coordinates, Zheng Tan would actually make the first move. Zheng Tan's independent regiment was quite famous among the cat army led by the 3 cat tyrants, Tang Shi, Song Ci, and Yuan Chu. In the last few years, under the leadership of the 3 cat tyrants, the little tigers had been spread out all over the country, and had been secretly observing the movements of Shadow Stream killers everywhere. Thus, with Zheng Tan's attack on the mountain, all the stray cats in the nearby cities had been mobilized. Back then, Yuan Chu's capable cat General Li Yuanba had led the new cat army to catch a glimpse of Shadow Stream killers' movements. Li Yuanba's new cat army was in Dongbei City, which was above Jinghua City. At that moment, in an abandoned sewer in Dongbei City, a sturdy yellow short-tailed cat from the new cat army headquarters was looking at a map with 2 staff cats at its side. Currently, Shadow Stream killers in Dongbei City are gathering in a short period of time and are trying to head for the capital, Jinghua City, said one of the cat staff officers. Li Yuanba, what mission are they carrying out this time? They probably aren't. They're anxious to get closer to Jinghua City and aren't in the mood to fight. When they encounter a small disturbance from our cat army, they will quickly break away and take a detour. 2 days ago, Zheng Tan kept telling me that it was going to make big news. It looks like something big has happened. Li Yuanba narrowed its eyes and murmured softly, otherwise, this bunch of Shadow Stream killers wouldn't be so desperate to get closer to Jinghua City. That guy's headquarters must be there. Cat Staff Officer, does Commander think that Shadow Stream's headquarters has been attacked? Zheng Tan only has 1 independent regiment, 1 regiment, and they dare attack the headquarters? Li Yuanba chuckled. Hee, why wouldn't they dare? There's nothing in this world that Zheng Tan doesn't dare to do. If it had 1 or 2 divisions, it would have King wiped out Shadow Stream long ago. Chapter 169. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Li Yuanba slapped its thigh with its thick cat paws. Pass on my order, the entire regiment is to assemble immediately. Use harassment tactics with 0 casualties and do everything in your power to delay this group of Shadow Stream killers. We must delay them all before Zheng Tan officially attacks Shadow Stream's command center. Staff Officer Cat, Regiment Commander, should we ask our superiors? The corner of Li Yuanba's mouth twitched. Ask for instructions? There's no time for that, opportunities change in the blink of an eye and are fleeting. The old chief is so busy, let's not disturb him. Rather than miss a good opportunity, it's better to attack decisively. Even if this group of people is going to offer birthday congratulations, we can't let them succeed. The cat staff officer was immediately speechless. Because it seemed to already see the end. In fact, all the cats in the regiment could guess that, given the relationship between Li Yuanba and Zheng Tan, as long as Zheng Tan took action. Even if it hadn't informed Li Yuanba beforehand, as long as Li Yuanba heard the news, it would definitely give its full support. This tacit understanding, which didn't require any words, was something that Zheng Tan and Li Yuanba had cultivated under the 3 cat tyrants back then. Common cats couldn't understand this ironclad tacit understanding and friendship at all. The cat staff officer next to Li Yuanba sighed in its heart. With Li Yuanba's attack, there would probably be a chain reaction among the stray cat regiments in nearby cities, and the stray cats in several cities would be thrown into chaos. Furthermore, was it really possible to achieve 0 casualties? Of course, Li Yuanba wasn't Zheng Tan's only hardcore brother. Everyone knew that the three cat tyrants Tang Shi, Song Ci, and Yuan Chu had cultivated the four great guardian deities back then. Zheng Tan was a soldier under Thunderbolt Tiger Tang Shi, Li Yuanba was a soldier under Obedient Tiger Yuan Chu, and the last little handsome tiger, Song Ci, had cultivated the remaining two great guardian deities, Yun Fei and A Huang. Yun Fei and Zheng Tan's fate had started with the color of their fur. They were both black cats. However, Yun Fei's chest hair and the fur on all 4 feet were white, and it was a treading on snow cat. Some people said that Yun Fei's breed was treading on snow on all 4s. Back then, Yun Fei and Zheng Tan had trained and carried out missions together at night, and thus had established a deep relationship. Now, Zheng Tan had become the commander of an independent regiment, while Yun Fei was also leading another regiment. Regiment number 358, this number had a special meaning for Yun Fei. Back then, it had carried out exactly 358 missions with Zheng Tan. Yun Fei's Regiment 358 was probably the closest geographically to Zheng Tan's independent regiment, as they were both in Songhai City. Zheng Tan found a tree hole to be the regiment's headquarters, while Yun Fei found a shit-shoveling officer who was willing to do everything for it, and lived comfortably in the villa. This large villa was the headquarters of Yun Fei's 358th Regiment. The neatly arranged cat house in the backyard of the villa belonged to Yun Fei's subordinates. Of course, these cat houses had all been developed, just like Zheng Tan's tree hole. There were many different types of cat houses, such as those for the cavalry, those for the infantry, and those for the artillery. And Yun Fei's own command center. After Zheng Tan had left Songhai City to launch an attack and Li Yuanba had issued an order for reinforcements, Yun Fei was the third person to realize this large-scale battle. In Regiment 358's headquarters, Yun Fei was looking at a map. Which guy is so bold as to actually launch an independent battle? Yun Fei's cat staff officer. Based on recent operations, only Zheng Tan's independent regiment has been able to rally forces in a short period of time and arm themselves into the capital to launch an attack. Also, based on the location on the map, that place is Shadow Stream's headquarters. Those coordinates were just a rumor at first, but I didn't expect Commander Zheng Tan to be one step ahead of us and launch an attack. Yun Fei frowned and rubbed its face with its snow-white paws. That's not right either. Jinghua, Dongbei, Songhai, they're all at war. The entire South China cat army is in chaos. This Zheng Tan is too bold. Cat staff officer, Commander, what should we do now? Yun Fei, what else can we do? Of course we have to think of a way to stop the enemy reinforcements. Inform the artillery battalion to bring out all the latest weapons. Remember, those Shadow Stream killers are quite ferocious. We just need to harass them as much as possible. Smoke grenades, flash grenades, noise grenades, fire everything that needs to be fired. Cat staff officer, do we have to use that Lu Baobao brand flash grenade as well? Yun Fei, use it first. Afterwards, I'll have Zheng Tan reimburse me. Even if Zheng Tan isn't the one organizing the attack this time, my 358 regiment will still help out. Cat staff officer, of the 4 great guardian deities, the last to receive the news was A Huang. A Huang was a yellow tiger, and it had been rather miserable when it had been born, having been castrated by its owner. Not long ago, it had even suffered from depression, and it was Zheng Tan who had helped A Huang out of this psychological shadow, so it had a very deep friendship with Zheng Tan. Huang's new regiment was in southern Yan, between Jinghua and Songhai. When it received the battle report, Huang was drinking a little wine in the sewers. The chief of staff next to Huang reported the situation with a solemn expression on his face. We've just received word from our friendly forces liaison officer that Li Yuanba's new cat army as well as some local stray cat organizations have all joined the battle. Huang, Chief of staff. Even Yun Fei's 358 regiment is muddle-headed. They haven't received any instructions from their chief, and have no idea what's going on. Huang, ha 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 ha. It must be that guy Zheng Tan. That guy is King stirring up trouble again. Chief of staff, does Commander think Commander Zheng Tan is making a move? The coordinates of that place seem to have only recently been confirmed to be Shadow Stream's headquarters. The chief hasn't given any instructions yet, but that guy is actually making a move ahead of time. Who knows what that guy is thinking? Its independent regiment has a grudge with Shadow Stream to begin with. Maybe it's trying to gain the initiative by striking first. Huang wagged its tail and chuckled. I've been mobilized by this guy's attack. It's even more awesome than the chief. In an apartment in downtown Jinghua, the bureau chief cat Thunderbolt Tiger Tang Shi was on the phone, so angry that its fur was standing on end. What the hell is going on? If you don't even know what's going on, then what are you doing? Is your head made of a chamber pot? Obedient Tiger Yuanxiu pressed its hands on the table with a pained expression. What's going on? Why did they all start fighting without even reporting to each other? Who's commanding the battle? F***K, they should have at least played a game before fighting. Who can tell me what the hell is going on? Omnipotent Immortal Meow. If only you were here. Song Ci heaved a helpless sigh. As soon as it said this, there was a flash of spirit light and a cloud of smoke in the apartment, and a snow-white Persian cat appeared in front of the three cat tyrants. Wang Ling, who had transformed into a white Persian cat, floated in the air. The moment it saw the three cat tyrants, it heaved a slight sigh of relief. Chapter 170. When the three cat lords saw Wang Ling's incarnation of Immortal Meow, their eyes widened in disbelief. The other cats in the apartment were also dumbfounded because they had never seen Immortal Meow before, and had only heard rumors about it from the three cat chiefs, Tang Shi, Song Ci, and Yuan Chu. None of the cats had expected Immortal Meow to show up again at this time. At this moment, the three cat tyrants were so touched that they almost burst into tears. Seeing Tang Shi, Song Ci, and Yuan Chu, the three cats he had bred, Wang Ling couldn't help but feel emotional in his heart. He had never thought that the three Chinese countryside cats he had found in a cardboard box back then would actually grow so big. They had all been abandoned by their owners, and now, these unwanted kittens had grown up to become the leaders of the three major cat armies, and had even bought a high-end apartment in the center of Jinghua City to use as a command post. Actually, it was quite incredible when one thought about it. It was already 1:00 in the afternoon, and a conservative estimate was that 2 hours had passed since Jingtan had launched its attack. Around Jingtan's point of contact, the nearby cat regiments were either blocking the enemy or providing reinforcements. Only Tang Shi's headquarters were still in the dark. Thus, Wang Ling's appearance this time could be said to be very timely. He stretched out a cat paw and pointed to a certain point on the map. Seeing the location on the map, Song Ci immediately thought of something. Aren't these the coordinates we found out recently? They say it's Shadow Stream's command post. We haven't verified the authenticity of the information yet, right? Why have they started fighting? Which army is it? Saying this, Song Ci and Yuan Chu looked at Tang Shi at the same time. Tang Shi, why are you looking at me? Song Ci and Yuan Chu said in unison. Except for your family's Jingtan, no other cat has the guts. Tang Shi, Song Ci scratched its head and turned to Wang Ling with cupped fists. Thanks to Immortal, at least we found the source of the fighting. Then what should we do now? Yuan Chu cupped its chin. What else can we do? They've already started fighting. There's no point in stopping Jingtan now. Let's try to stop the enemy's reinforcements first, and do our best to help Jingtan take down this command post. Song Ci sighed and replied with a headache. Wang Ling didn't linger too long at Tang Shi's command center. After handing over a large stack of talismans to Tang Shi, he planned to go over to Jingtan's side to check out the situation. These were light armor talismans with strong defensive properties, which he had drawn in Little Black's research institute. Wang Ling wanted Tang Shi and the others to quickly distribute the talismans to all the battle zones. On top of the light armor talisman's original effect, Wang Ling added 2 identification spells and a dispersion spell. Within the effective area of the talisman, all cats would be automatically identified by the talisman and automatically connected for protection. Actually, the principle was pretty much the same as Wi-Fi. Oh, that was right, he had stolen this idea from the Wi-Fi pill that Immortal Toya was working on. It was already 1:30 in the afternoon, and Shadow Stream's hidden command post on the hilltop was still doing its best to block Jingtan's offensive. A total of more than 20 Shadow Stream killers surrounded the headquarters, doing their best to cast all kinds of defensive spells and construct a defensive barrier. Before Shadow Stream's reinforcements arrived, there were only 20 or so miserable people left in the command post. Commander, all sides are now maintaining an absolute advantage in their attacks, and we haven't suffered any casualties. Battalion 1 Commander the monk was giving a brief report to Jingtan, who was commanding from the rear. Everything was within Jingtan's expectations. There weren't many people in Shadow Stream's command post to begin with, even though some of them had higher realms. But once they were on the defensive, this realm was useless here. This group of killers was best at going around the back, stabbing and bursting out. As long as they could defend against this, they would be trapped on the hilltop and forced to construct a defensive array. This battle plan would already be halfway to success. Do we have enough artillery shells? Jingtan asked as it raised its high-powered military binoculars and looked at the hilltop. Enough, 2nd Battalion Commander brought a lot this time. The monk replied. Jingtan, that's good. This time, our regiment has brought a total of 30 Yadali cannons, which gives us a sufficient advantage in terms of firepower. Pass on my orders. Tell 2nd Battalion Commander not to be stingy with his artillery shells, and to bombard us continuously. Yes. Commander. The monk replied. The continuous barrage of the Yadali cannons was very uncomfortable for the Shadow Stream killers on the hilltop, and they were doing their best to hold up the barrier. Feeling the fierce bombardment from outside, some of them felt their perlicues go numb from the shock. A Yadali cannon's durability was 10 times, and it would use up 1 time after firing 30 artillery shells. Thus, given that there were sufficient artillery shells, a Yadali cannon could fire 300 shells. The most important thing was that the power of this artillery shell was comparable to an all-out attack from a middle golden core cultivator. The most frightening thing was that this Yadali cannon also had the passive effect of increasing its firepower based on the number of women in its target, and among the Shadow Stream killers trapped on the hilltop, including the master of Shadow Stream Jiang Luiyue, there were a total of 6 female killers. This directly increased the power of the Yadali cannon by 60%. The rapid and fierce bombardment made Mo Li anxiously look outside the barrier. He was doing his best to strengthen the defense. He felt that if Shadow Stream's reinforcements didn't arrive soon, they really might not be able to hold out. One of the Shadow Stream killers had suffered internal injuries from the bombardment, and couldn't help but vomit blood on the ground. Lord Mo Li, how about we surrender, surrender? Mo Li gritted his teeth fiercely. Surrender to a bunch of cats? What kind of joke was this? My lord, what should we do now? Although he didn't want to surrender, Mo Li really wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. Wasn't it said that animals couldn't become spirits after the founding of the People's Republic? They were about to become King immortals. Is there any way to contact Aang? Tell her to hide outside for the time being and not to come back. Jiang Luiyue was also struggling to support the barrier. She had a bad feeling about this. Bzzt. At that moment, there was a burst of spirit light in the air above the hilltop, and a snow-white figure suddenly appeared. Jiang Luiyue's eyes were very sharp, and she immediately saw that this was a white Persian cat. Her intuition told her that this Persian cat was in cahoots with the cats at the foot of the hill. But why had this cat appeared here? Had it been teleported in by a magic treasure? Jiang Luiyue didn't think too much about it. The situation was critical now. She stared at this white cat, bent down, and then abruptly pounced on it. Wang Ling, who had just teleported here, was still trying to lock onto Jingtan's position when he saw a woman actually directly attack with the ball in her arms, grabbing it tightly. Before Wang Ling could figure out what on earth this woman was up to, Jiang Luiyue grabbed him and lifted him high into the air. She then used a telepathic spell to shout down the hill, "Cats at the foot of the hill, listen up. This little brother of yours is now our kitty pledge. Please stop your attacks. Otherwise, my venerable self will immediately kill him." Wang Ling. Chapter 171. Because of Jiang Liuyue's threat, the bombardment stopped. Didn't I say everyone stay in position and attack with artillery fire? Who ran to the top of the mountain for me? Zheng Tan had never expected that there would actually be a flaw in its plan here. Grabbing its binoculars, the lens quickly swept toward the top of the mountain. Let me see which bastard it is. Then, Zheng Tan saw the snow-white figure in the woman's arms at the top of the mountain. Meow. Immortal meow? This time, Zheng Tan was dumbfounded. When Wang Ling had been caught by Jiang Luyue, he had still been trying to sense Zheng Tan's aura. In the end, he discovered that clever Zheng Tan was still cowering at the foot of the mountain, and he instantly breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he marveled at Zheng Tan's command. Commanding tens of thousands of cats in battle, Zheng Tan had actually managed to achieve 0 casualties. Not only that, this group of shadow stream killers had been forced to cower at the top of the mountain by Zheng Tan's independent regiment's Yadali cannon, and didn't dare come down at all. Wang Ling realized that he had been worried for nothing. Zheng Tan had grown much faster than he had imagined. Turning his head to look at the woman holding him to her chest, Wang Ling knew that this was the legendary master of Shadow Stream. But the strange thing was that Wang Ling felt that the other party's aura was very weak. Because according to the rumors, the real master of Shadow Stream should be at the soul formation stage at the very least. With this question in mind, Wang Ling opened his heavenly eye. As he had expected, this master of Shadow Stream wasn't real, or rather, it wasn't the original body at all, it was just a clone created from spirit power clay. Compared with Wang Ling's great separation spell, the clone created from spirit power clay had a more stable material structure, and there was no need to worry about the clone disappearing. But the disadvantage was that this clone could only be absorbed when it was close to the original body. If the clone was damaged while it was outside, the realm of the original body would also be affected. No wonder this woman had been trapped on the top of the mountain and didn't dare come down. If this was the master of Shadow Stream's original body, Zheng Tan's Yadali cannon might not have been able to do anything to the other party. This was a rather treacherous woman. In order to keep her original body from being exposed, she had actually made this insurance. It could only be said that as the real master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luyue was more cautious than most people thought. Even so, there was one thing that Jiang Luyue couldn't guard against. That was Wang Ling's appearance. This bunch of damn cats, when my Shadow Stream reinforcements arrive, you'll all die. Jiang Luyue said coldly in a low voice as she clutched Wang Ling tightly. Wang Ling gazed indifferently at Jiang Luyue. Although Jiang Luyue was holding him very tightly, it didn't really hurt. His posture was a little strange because the 2 balls behind him were leaning against the sofa. Of course, Wang Ling wasn't that wretched. This kind of voluptuous type had never been his cup of tea. So when the woman lifted it high into the air as a cat, Wang Ling twisted his body lightly and broke free of the woman's hold. Not good. Jiang Luyue hadn't expected this snow-white Persian cat to have so much strength. She hurriedly reached out to grab it, but her outstretched hand only brushed against Wang Ling's smooth cat tail. Then, she watched helplessly as this Persian cat floated in the air and stared at her condescendingly. Jiang Luyue finally realized that this cat wasn't simple. Sure enough, to suddenly appear on this mountain top, did he rely on some magic treasure to teleport here? Who on earth are you? She also looked at Wang Ling. Afterwards, what responded to her was a powerful spiritual pressure that poured down like a flood. Jiang Liuyue's eyes flashed with a strange light when she saw this white Persian cat. It wasn't just her, all the Shadow Stream killers on the mountaintop couldn't move. Whether it was Jiang Luyue or Emoli, they all felt as if their blood had frozen and their bodies were stiff, unable to move. The frozen Shadow Stream killers all had frightened expressions on their faces. In this state, they couldn't cast any spells at all, and at that moment, the barriers that had blocked the artillery fire had all collapsed. Wang Ling looked down the mountain at Zheng Tan, who was holding its binoculars and waiting for his instructions. Wang Ling nodded from a distance. In the next moment, Zheng Tan roared several times as it opened fire. Boom 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 boom, the entire mountaintop was instantly filled with rising mushroom clouds. this series of explosions lasted a full 5 minutes before they stopped. When the smoke on the mountaintop cleared, the shadow stream killers were all burnt to a crisp and lay paralyzed on the ground in all kinds of strange postures. Yadali's artillery fire was very fierce, but it hadn't completely killed this group of shadow stream killers. Standing amidst the artillery fire and protected by the aura barrier, Wang Ling strolled leisurely as if there was no one around. If this had been a game, you might have been able to see a bunch of misses pop up above Wang Ling's head. Wang Ling had estimated the power of this artillery fire. At most, it would only seriously injure this group of people. As long as they couldn't move, that would be enough. As for the rest, Wang Ling felt that they could just hand them over to the state in accordance with past practice. When Zheng Tan led the chief of staff, the monk and the battalion commander of 2nd Battalion up the mountain, all the cats saw this usually fierce leader of an independent regiment howl and throw himself into Wang Ling's arms like a wild cat out of its leash. The monk covered its cat face with one hand, suddenly feeling a little ashamed. "You have to be reserved, regiment commander." Wang Ling, this was Zheng Tan's second time seeing a cat, and its excitement was self-evident. After stabilizing its emotions, Zheng Tan finally regained its composure and instructed the cats behind it, "You guys, search them for me." The entrance to Shadow Stream's headquarters was in a well cover at the top of the mountain, which was relatively well hidden. But now that no one from Shadow Stream on the top of the mountain was able to move, the cats of the independent regiment moved without the slightest resistance. Wang Ling looked around and confirmed that all the Shadow Stream killers had fallen. Jiang Liuyue's clay clone had been blown to pieces, and only half a face was left. It was just that half of the face was also scorched. She looked at Wang Ling with hatred in her eyes, so hateful that she could actually still speak. "Who on earth are you?" Wang Ling didn't say anything, and only probed her with his spiritual senses. He wanted to use the memory retrieval spell to search Jiang Liuyue and see if he could extract any valuable information. Unfortunately, however, he found that Jiang Liuyue's mind was completely blank. Sure enough, he still had to find the original body. The memory retrieval spell had no effect on the clay clone. Since there wasn't any useful information, this clay clone was of no value to Wang Ling. Wang Ling opened his eyes, which shone with spirit light. Without saying anything else, he directly blew up the remaining half of the woman's face, at the same time, in a completely sealed basement in Jinghua City. Chapter 172. In the secret underground room, Jiang Liuyue clutched her chest as she struggled to adjust her breathing and rhythm, gritting her teeth in pain. The pain from the backlash from the destruction of the clay clone had inflicted unprecedented damage on her body. Her face was green and red from the pain, and she had even bitten her lip until it bled. At the same time, she endured the pain and cast a spirit talisman, "Aang, hurry up and recover." This was the life talisman, which had once been linked to Jiang Luiying's soul, and could share her location after being cast. Jiang Liuyue had been controlling her clay clone earlier, and hadn't had the time to use this life talisman to contact Jiang Luiying. She hoped that Jiang Luiying wouldn't go near Shadow Stream's headquarters, which had already been taken over by a large group of cats, but the life talisman floated in the air, and there was no response for a long time. The master of Shadow Stream pounded the ground in resentment. It was already too late. The monk and a group of cats rummaged through Shadow Stream's headquarters for a long time, and only seized some immortal elixirs and spirit medicines as well as one-time use magic treasures. These magic treasures were used by Shadow Stream killers for assassination missions, and actually weren't of much use to a cat group like the Independent Regiment, which relied on direct firepower output. Apart from this, there were boxes upon boxes of money. There were stacks upon stacks of 100 yuan bills in the boxes, and there were dozens of them. There were also some gold bricks and antiques. The monk made a rough estimate. If these things were converted into HNY, they would be worth at least several billion. Wang Ling was deeply shocked by such an enormous amount of money. He felt that this was definitely the master of Shadow Stream's bad taste. From a cultivator's point of view, they often viewed worldly money as worthless. In Huaxiao Nation, HNY was still the most common currency, and anything could be bought in HNY. However, for cultivators, HNY was generally used for daily necessities. If they wanted to buy a magic treasure, they would usually trade it in elixirs or magic treasures of equivalent value, which was more intuitive and easier to understand. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome to count millions or even tens of millions of dollars worth of money. Oh, by the way, it was worth mentioning that Father Wang had bought the Chanel brand magic sword for Wang Ling back then with gritted teeth and 3 million yuan on his back. In order to count these coins, the salesperson at the flagship store of Chanel's Legend of the Sword and Fairy spent a full 3 hours. In the end, this immortal sword hadn't even warmed up in Wang Ling's hands when he broke it with a crack. "Commander, we're rich." The monk's face was full of excitement as it reported what it had seized to Zheng Tan. "All right, keep these things properly. From now on, all the cats in our independent regiment will be able to drink big bowls of milk and eat big mouthfuls of fish." Zheng Tan put its hands on its hips proudly. "But guild leader, there's something that looks very strange." As the monk spoke, he ordered the cats behind him to carry a stone box over. The stone box wasn't big, but it was quite heavy. 2 foundation establishment stage cats could barely lift it. When the stone box was placed on the ground, it was obvious that the loose soil on the ground immediately sunk in. The monk stared at the stone box and said, "This thing was found in the innermost room of Shadow Stream's headquarters. It looks a little like an antique. Guild leader, do you know what it is?" Wang Ling and Zheng Tan's gazes were focused on the stone box. It was squarish with curved corners and had neat patterns on all 4 sides. It looked like a work of art. The reason why it had attracted the attention of the monk and the other staff officer cats was that they could smell the faint scent of blood on the stone box. "This thing has obviously been stained with blood, but I don't know what it is." Staring at the stone box, Zheng Tan frowned and turned its gaze to Wang Ling. "Immortal Meow, what do you think?" Wang Ling's pupils shone slightly as he scanned the entire stone box with his gaze. In the end, he was astonished to find that the inside of the stone box was hollow. It was actually a template. And from its shape, it looked very much like a mask. At that moment, the stone ghost mask flashed through Wang Ling's mind. He somehow felt that the pattern on the outside of the stone box had the same wonderful effect as the stone ghost mask. In the end, Wang Ling put the stone box away. He felt that this thing should be able to provide grenade-throwing senior immortal with a lot of new clues about the stone ghost mask. Of course, the cats in the independent regiment naturally wouldn't have any objections to Wang Ling taking the stone box away. This was Immortal Meow. Even if Immortal Meow wanted to hand over all the supplies they had seized, they wouldn't have any objections. In fact, it was just that Wang Ling wasn't interested in these supplies. Furthermore, it was really hard for Wang Ling to imagine that the Grand Shadow Stream headquarters actually didn't even have a bag of crispy noodle snacks. Sure enough, this bunch of people who didn't eat crispy noodle snacks had no love. They didn't even have crispy noodle snacks. No wonder they were labeled a terrorist organization. Zheng Tan and the others would be responsible for dealing with the Shadow Stream killers who had already been blasted into charcoal on the ground, so Wang Ling didn't need to worry at all. This group of people had now completely lost the ability to fight, and probably wouldn't wake up for a while. But before he left, Wang Ling cast a spell at the entrance to Shadow Stream's headquarters. It was a simple teleportation array that directly connected to Songhai First Prison. After that, Zheng Tan swiftly withdrew with a full load of supplies and the cat soldiers around it. Not long after they left the headquarters on the top of the mountain, a proud girl wearing a cap and a mask swiftly approached the top of the mountain. But when she was halfway up the mountain, she suddenly felt that something was a little strange. She hadn't seen a single person along the way, and somehow felt that Shadow Stream's command center was especially quiet today. Emily clearly told someone that Big Sister was looking for me, so why isn't there anyone here now? The girl felt very strange, but she had no other way to contact Jiang Luyue. When she had escaped from the prison, she had accidentally lost the life talisman. It had probably been washed away in the sewers. The only way now was to go up to the top of the mountain and take a look. Maybe Big Sister was in a meeting. With this thought in mind, the girl continued to climb the mountain. But the closer she got to the top, the stranger her expression became. She smelled gunpowder smoke. Big Sister. Jiang Luiying gritted her teeth anxiously and rushed to the top of the mountain in a few quick strides. She quickly found the entrance to the headquarters, opened the manhole cover, and jumped down. It was at that moment that the girl finally realized that she had fallen into a trap. But it was already too late. With a burst of glazed light, the girl felt herself enter a space tunnel. After jumping for a while, she fell into a black hole. When the light around her dissipated, the girl had already appeared on a brand new map. It was still that incomparably thick barrier from a distance, and still that unclimbable perimeter wall, Songhai First Prison. She had actually been sent back here. At that moment, Jiang Luiying felt a trace of despair. Chapter 173. All along, whether inside or outside the circle, everyone had mixed opinions about this, young and promising, Audiobook of the Alliance of 100 Schools General Administration. Some people thought that Audiobook had indeed relied on his own strength to get where he was, while others thought that he had used his connections and opened a back door. In fact, only Audiobook himself knew the situation best. Not only had he won without doing anything, he had done so in a baffling way. This time, Audiobook had been summoned to the prison by Secretary Sun Dakong, and had watched helplessly as that killer maiden had escaped from prison. To be honest, Audiobook was really quite depressed because he really hadn't been of any help this time. Warden Liang was just as gloomy as Audiobook. After all, the girl had escaped from right under his nose. Furthermore, the girl's response after escaping from the cage this time could be considered very timely. Warden Liang had thought that he would be able to catch her before the impact of the incident spread further. In the end, the girl had still escaped in front of Secretary Dakong. At the entrance of Songhai First Prison, Warden Liang was seeing Audiobook off, even though the media had already clarified the matter. Although he had already clarified the matter in the news media, he still had to take the blame. Unless he could redeem himself by capturing that Shadow Stream maiden again, he would still be punished. Looking at the current situation, a demotion was inevitable. Warden Liang had worked in the prison for many years, but this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. In the end, he could only admit that he was unlucky. The barrier was right in front of the main entrance of the prison. 2 days ago, the girl had smashed open a hole in the barrier, and after urgent repairs, it had more or less recovered. Under normal circumstances, only the prison staff could enter and exit the barrier normally. Everyone else had to be accompanied if they wanted to leave the barrier. Led by Warden Liang, Audiobook arrived at the entrance. The atmosphere on the way was a little depressing, and it was obvious that Warden Liang was feeling gloomy as he considered how to write a self-reflection essay. Writing a self-reflection essay was a skill. As long as he wrote to the point, his superiors might give him a lighter punishment on account of his years of hard work. Audiobook really didn't know how to console him, and could only sigh. Warden Liang, don't take it to heart. There's a good saying that everything will sort itself out. Warden Liang's eyes were full of hidden bitterness. Sometimes, when you're in a hopeless situation, you can't help it. Perhaps miracles often happen. As he consoled him, Audiobook pointed to the sky. Warden Liang, look, when God closes a door, he will definitely open another window. Just as Audiobook finished speaking, a colorful cloud suddenly appeared in the sky. There was a buzzing sound. A black shadow fell out of the cloud with a plop sound. It had to be said that Wang Ling's express delivery was very timely. And so, just like that, Jiang Luiying was caught once again. Warden Liang held an emergency meeting on the case, and Audiobook, who had been about to leave, was forced to stay. Audiobook knew that government departments had to follow procedures, and it was really hard to explain how the Shadow Stream maiden had been caught. Because this guy had indeed suddenly fallen out of thin air in front of them. Furthermore, he had been pointing at the sky at the time of the incident, which had been seen by the prison guards accompanying him nearby. The meeting was quiet. Everyone was waiting for Warden Liang to report on the case. The old secretary sat on one side drinking tea, looking like he was watching a show. In fact, most of the people had already spread the general situation in private, and they had more or less understood it. Audiobook lowered his head and fidgeted uneasily, as he had a bad feeling about it. Warden Liang opened his mouth. The jailbreak incident this time was resolved so quickly. Of course, our colleagues from all departments in Songhai First Prison worked together to search for Jiang Luiying. Of course, the person we should thank the most is our director Joie. Speaking up to this point, Warden Liang couldn't help the tears welling up in his eyes. To be honest, I misunderstood Director Joie before. But Director Joie's performance was truly flabbergasting. For our Huaxiao nation to have an official like Director Joie who cares about the people and is quietly working behind the scenes is truly a great blessing for the government and the people. Joie, Warden Liang, I think we should give Director Joie a first-class merit this time. Joie, actually, alright, little Joisy, don't be modest. A meritorious deed is a meritorious deed. You were the one who arranged for the person to be arrested last time, but in the end, you're still being modest. It's good to be humble, but you should also be frank about your meritorious deed. The old secretary directly interrupted Joie and looked at him with unprecedented kindness in his eyes. Sure enough, you didn't let me down. Joie nodded. Joie, and so, Joie had performed a meritorious deed again. The old secretary's words were worth 1,000 words. Joie also felt very helpless about this. Nowadays, whether it was good or bad comments, they all followed the trend. Furthermore, most people like to follow their first impressions and follow their own subjective perceptions to judge whether something was good or bad. Joie remembered that in the years when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's cultivation forum had been in full swing, there had been a lot of cultivation forums that imitated this format. One of them was called Drops of the Sky. Back then, there had been two kinds of people in this forum. One was the hidden cultivation bigwigs, and the other was the legendary keyboard warriors called Shenong cultivators. Most of these Shenong cultivators were Jianghu hooligans with no experience in cultivation. They had no experience in cultivation at all, yet they liked to comment on cultivators' cultivation matters. When someone's pill furnace exploded, a Shenong cultivators would jump out and say that it had to be their elixir formula that was wrong. When a powerful family quarreled with each other, a Shenong cultivators would indiscriminately join in the fun. Once, someone who claimed to be a Shenong cultivator certified by Huaxiao Nation pointed out a certain apothecary's elixir formula. In the end, when that apothecary's elixir hit the market, it received a lot of praise. Just like that so-called Shenong cultivator's alchemist was slapped in the face. The most important thing was that this Shenong cultivators could still pretend to be indifferent and unperturbed, saying that they didn't care as they continued to follow other people's weibo. Furthermore, Joie also realized that the funniest thing was that these Shenong cultivators actually liked to take their own positions. As long as one person in the forum was attacked, they would think that the comment was an insult to them. Then, they would immediately gang up on that person, fighting inside and outside the circle. In the end, the post would be filled with a foul atmosphere. Now, this cultivation forum had already fallen into decline. After the jailbreak incident this time, Joie deeply felt that his situation was in fact similar to this declining forum. Every time he rendered meritorious service, it was someone else who had set the pace, while he himself always had a blank expression on his face. With so many things bottled up in his heart, who should he turn to in the end? Chapter 174. The independent regiment's preemptive, large-scale anti-terrorist operation this time had ended in Shadow Stream's crushing defeat, with 0 casualties among the local cat regiments. Wang Ling's light armor talisman had played a considerable role in this, since many of the Shadow Stream killers who had come to reinforce them had suffered the backlash of the talisman and died like dogs. In a high-end apartment, Tang Shi, Song Ci, and Yuan Chu, the 3 leaders of the cat army, were in the middle of a post-war summary report. Thanks to the prompt handling of this matter, the active response of all divisions and exploration teams as well as the local stray cat troops, as well as Immortal Meow's help behind the scenes, Jingtan's decapitation operation this time had been a great success. But in terms of discipline, Jingtan had definitely violated the rules. Whether it should be punished or not was actually a very serious question. Tang Shi was at a loss. After all, Jingtan was a cat it had brought along. It pushed up its glasses and looked at Song Ci and Yuan Chu on the side. What do you think? Song Ci crossed its arms and looked a little serious. Zheng Tan directly commanded tens of thousands of cats in an anti-terrorist operation, this time without asking permission. Based on this alone, it wouldn't be too much to deduct all of its future dried fish. But, in terms of tactical effect alone, Zheng Tan's independent regiment dared to attack Shadow Stream's hidden command post with just one regiment of troops, and use suppressive firepower to force this group of ruthless killers to go on the defensive. It was truly beautifully done. Furthermore, through this operation, the various combat troops have reaped a great harvest, and the stray cat troops in various places have unwittingly joined forces. The scale of this operation is no less than a large-scale anti-terrorist operation. Yuan Chu spread out a graph of data on the table. This is the statistics we just received, take a look. This is the increase in the number of cats in the three armies after this operation. When Tang Shi saw the curve, it was directly stupefied. A net increase of 8 million cats? Our three armies only had 2 million cats to begin with. Song Ci rested its chin on its paws. After this operation, these stray cats from more than a dozen different cities are willing to rely on us. Of course, based on the preliminary statistics, the number is indeed a little higher. The stray cats in our three armies are all combat troops, and have definitely been screened. As for the cats that weren't selected, we'll find suitable shit-shoveling officers to take care of them. Tang Shi scratched its head. So many cats, can we manage them all? Will there be any problems with funding? Yuan Chu smiled. Zheng Tan, this kid, seized the three armies' pay from Shadow Stream's command center, which we wouldn't be able to earn back even if we spent dozens of years. Together with the one-time use magic treasures and antiques we seized, we filtered out the rest and sold off the useless stuff. We definitely have sufficient funds. That's good. Tang Shi nodded. By the way, what happened to that master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luiyue? Song Ci said, this master of Shadow Stream is a step that all of us missed. I didn't expect him to be so cautious. Using the spiritual clay to create a clone, he escaped like a cicada shedding its skin. But Immortal Meow also said that we don't have to be too wary of this person for the time being. Her clone was destroyed by Immortal Meow, and she lost at least 600 years of cultivation. 600 years? That much? Song Ci chuckled. This time, she lost 600 years of cultivation in one go. She was afraid that after a while, Zheng Tan's cultivation would be higher than hers. It said that after receiving Immortal Meow's personal guidance, its realm has advanced by leaps and bounds. This kid is too impulsive. With a few more days of tempering, he'll definitely become the backbone of the army. Yuan Chu stroked its cat whiskers. Tang Shi was a little speechless. It had thought that its two brothers were going to punish Zheng Tan, but in the end, they were actually speaking up for it. Sure enough, it felt good to be appointed by Immortal Meow. On the other side, the Shadow Stream girls' prison break had just ended, and Warden Liang was writing a post-battle reflection after the seminar. Thanks to Audiobook this time, that escaped girl had been caught in time and hadn't caused any further social impact. His position as warden had been saved, but he still had to write a reflection. Warden Liang was having a headache. Apart from writing down his own mistakes in this self-criticism report, Warden Liang was also having a headache. In addition, he had to write a prison strengthening bill to improve Songhai First prison security measures in all aspects, so as to prevent this kind of situation from happening again. After thinking for a long time, Warden Liang sent Audiobook a text message, Director Zhua, I'm Little Liang. I'm currently writing a reflection on the prison strengthening bill. Do you have any comments? When Audiobook received this message, he almost dropped his phone. According to the government's definition of positions, he, as the director of the general administration of 100 schools, was actually on the same level as the warden of Songhai First Prison. In the end, after the girls' prison break, this Warden Liang had been calling himself Little Liang, which made Audiobook feel very awkward. There was absolutely no such thing as a bestie. Each department had its own duties, and Audiobook felt that he had no right to interfere. Of course, to be polite, he couldn't ignore this message. A moment later, he had an idea. He remembered that Heavenly Meow had a popular and trending mask, so he immediately took a screenshot of the shop and sent it to Warden Liang. When Warden Liang received the screenshot, he was dumbfounded. "Director Zhua, may I ask what this is?" Zhua replied, "This is a talkative mask. After you put it on, you'll become a chatterbox. If all the brothers in the prison wear one, they'll be able to work energetically every day, be alert at all times, and never feel sleepy again." Warden Liang. "Is this reliable? Who's the boss of this shop?" Zhua, Huang Xiaotian. Warden Liang. On the next Sunday, June 5th, the old man turned on the news, which was full of news about Shadow Stream's headquarters being destroyed by artillery fire. All the core gold ribbon killers in Shadow Stream's headquarters had been captured. Furthermore, before Wang Ling had left, he had erased all their memories of the cat group. After simple medical treatment, these Shadow Stream killers were escorted by several special motorcades to the Cultivation Police Station for interrogation that very night. They gave a very clear account of how the headquarters had been attacked, but unfortunately, no one could remember who had done it. The hostess of the news glanced at the script out of the corner of her eye, then reported with a smile, "Experts from the relevant department say that this is amnesia syndrome caused by the Yadali artillery attack." Wang Ling. Thus, the identity of the people who had attacked Shadow Stream's headquarters became an unsolved mystery since the founding of Huaxiu Nation. It wasn't just an unsolved mystery for the country, but also a huge cloud of doubt for the whole world. Some counterterrorism experts even said that Shadow Stream had actually been wiped out by aliens. Wang Ling felt that this was only half true. Because it wasn't aliens who had wiped out Shadow Stream, but cats. Chapter 175. It was June 6th on Monday in the 7th week of the semester. The topic of gossip in Grade 1, Class 3's morning self-study period this morning was naturally the series of events from the Shadow Stream girls' escape to her recapture. In fact, it wasn't just Grade 1, Class 3. It was likely that all the gossip in the streets and alleys these past few days had revolved around this matter. From the Shadow Stream girls' escape to the Shadow Stream Command Center being wiped out by a group of unknown people, to the capture of the Shadow Stream girl. This series of events, which was practically breaking international news, had happened in succession within 36 hours of the girl's escape. After this incident, there were a total of 2 people who became famous. One was Warden Liang of Songhai First Prison. Some people thought that the warden had deliberately released the Shadow Stream girl in order to catch a big fish with a long line. That was why there was such an explosive ending. The second person who became famous was Zhua, from the Shadow Stream killers invading number 60 high and being completely wiped out, the killer girl being captured in number 59 high, and then this series of events. It seemed that all the recent news about Shadow Stream was inextricably linked to this young director of the General Administration of 100 schools. After Dopigua finished copying his homework early in the morning, he started to think about this series of events, his small eyes mysterious. "I have an uncle who works in Songhai First Prison. He said that someone saw with their own eyes that the Shadow Stream girl fell out of a space tunnel that suddenly appeared out of nowhere." Everyone was shocked. A space tunnel? Super Chen frowned. Space magic is strictly prohibited by national law because it involves a lot of unnecessary problems. Hence, there is a space tower in every major city to monitor the fluctuations in the city's space. Dopigua nodded and continued, "That's the strange part. I have an uncle who works in the space tower who told me that when the incident happened, the space tower didn't sense anything unusual. This only proves 2 things." Everyone was curious. What 2 things? Master of Dopey scratched his chin. When the space tower was operating normally, there wasn't the slightest fluctuation. This proves, first, that the person who cast the space magic was very powerful, far beyond the range of the space tower's monitoring. Second, this person definitely isn't an alien like those experts in the news say. Why? Because the aliens now are not strong at all. A while ago, an uncle who works in the Ministry of Defense told me that there was a chaotic battle in the M78 Nebula not long ago. It was General E of our Ministry of National Defense who personally mediated. With one sky-parting sword, those rebel soldiers, who were tens of meters tall, were beaten until they didn't have the slightest bit of temper. Wang Ling. How many king uncles do you have? In the evening, grenade-throwing senior immortal visited the Wang family's small villa again. This time, he had brought 5 or 6 caddies of broccoli with him, which he had grown using spirit soil. Of course, the parent of the broccoli was still the one which grandfather Wang had put in grenade-throwing senior immortal's bowl back then. When he brought broccoli to the Wang family's small villa several times in a row, grenade-throwing senior immortal looked a little lost. Because to this day, he was still unable to truly figure out what old man Wang's intentions were when he picked broccoli for him back then. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had Song Qingshu stay at Wenxian Garden to look after the place, and he had become grenade-throwing senior immortal's butler. It was only recently that the hawthorn seed which he had planted the last time showed signs of growing. At this stage, he had to take more care of it. To be honest, Song Qingshu had actually changed a lot. Since leaving Immortal Castle, he had become a lot more cheerful. Furthermore, he had sold off all the magic treasures which he had obtained illegally while working at Immortal Castle, and invested them in a lot of charity organizations. Although he was still in the observation stage, grenade-throwing senior immortal was a lot less wary of Song Qingshu than when they had first met. What was more, the fighting lion was watching over the villa. After borrowing it from Immortal Toya for 2 days the last time, for some reason, this fighting lion refused to go back no matter what Immortal Toya said. No matter what Immortal Toya did, this fighting lion wouldn't budge even half a step. It just lay lazily at the entrance of grenade-throwing senior immortal's villa, its gaze fixed in one direction. Grenade-throwing senior immortal knew that it was in the direction of the Wang family's small villa. This fighting lion was actually looking forward to seeing Wang Ling again. This was a proud creature which would never bow its head to anyone, but in the last few days after Wang Ling had left, it had been looking forward to Wang Ling's reappearance like a young girl in love. Grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that Wang Ling was probably the only one who had the power to tame such an unruly creature in such a short period of time. This time, Wang Ling had come to the Wang family's small villa specifically to look for him. So after greeting the great seniors downstairs with the broccoli in hand, grenade-throwing senior immortal didn't stand on ceremony, and directly went upstairs to Wang Ling's bedroom to look for him. "Brother Ling, you're looking for me?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal pushed open the door and saw 2 muscular brothers earnestly helping Wang Ling with his homework at the desk. Loopy Toad smelled grenade-throwing senior immortal's aura from afar. Lying on the floor, it raised its tender green dog head and nodded politely. Wang Ling sat cross-legged on the bed and stared solemnly at the stone box in front of him. This is... When grenade-throwing senior immortal saw this simple and unadorned stone box, he abruptly felt deep veneration for it. He held the stone box and looked it up and down. It was completely sealed, and there was no opening at all. But through his heavenly eye, he could clearly see that a small part of the stone box was completely hollow. This is a mask box, and after the mask was definitely taken out, the outside was completely sealed off. That's why it's so sealed off. Grenade-throwing senior immortal held the stone box and scanned it carefully. The pattern and the faint but familiar smell of blood, he was almost certain that this stone box had been used to store the stone ghost mask back then. Back then, the stone ghost mask had caused a reign of terror in the cultivation world. The most terrifying thing about it was that it was so sturdy that it couldn't be destroyed at all. Thus, a lot of craftsmen had researched ways to seal the stone ghost mask. It was very obvious that this mask was a product of that era, and had been specially developed by some craftsmen to seal the stone ghost mask. Furthermore, it was very obvious that the stone ghost mask had been sealed in this mask box for a period of time. It was just that someone had taken it out again at some point, and the outside of the mask had also been resealed. "Brother Ling, where did you find this stone box?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal was very curious. Wang Ling truthfully explained the stone box's origin through telepathy. Cat. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was stupefied. He finally knew the truth behind the destruction of Shadow Stream's headquarters, which had been reported in the news in the last 2 days. If this story was made public, who knew how many diligent cultivators would cover their faces and run away? Chapter 176. The appearance of the stone box had indeed given grenade-throwing Senior Immortal a lot of inspiration. As for why the stone box had ended up in the hands of this group of Shadow Stream killers, after careful consideration, it wasn't hard to explain. After all, the stone ghost mask was something that opportunists who wanted to gain great power in a short period of time would scramble to get their hands on. It wasn't just Immortal Castle who was looking for it, the dark forces in these circles were also investigating it. This wasn't strange at all. The truth was that with the annihilation of Shadow Stream's headquarters this time, an internationally renowned killer organization might never have a chance to rise again. This was also a wake-up call for those dark forces who had been lurking in the dark in Huaxiao Nation. It was true that they had a guilty conscience. From the Shadow Stream incident, these dark forces could clearly sense that there was an expert in Huaxiao Nation whom they couldn't reach or detect. Even the Space Pagoda was unable to accurately detect the fluctuations of his space magic. This was really too strange. After that, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal left with the mask box. From the very beginning, Wang Ling hadn't wanted to get involved in this matter, and it was best to leave it to grenade-throwing. Before he left, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal received a compliment from Grandfather Wang, who sincerely praised the broccoli he had grown. Then, from the window on the second floor, Wang Ling saw this idiot scamper away with a face full of excitement, as if he had been awarded a little red flower by a kindergarten teacher. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal left the villa and went to Midnight Dining Hall. Before midnight, the shabby little store that looked somewhat coquettish was still in its miserable state of being in a dilapidated and deserted state as usual. Boss Tan was still wiping the dishes inside. When he saw grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, he was dazed for a moment before he raised his eyes slightly. "Yo, you're here for noodles again?" To be honest, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had always thought that Boss Tan's beef noodles were pretty average. But today, he had come with a question. Since he was already here, it didn't seem right to start asking questions without ordering something. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pondered for a moment before asking, "Do you have any other dishes?" Yes, I recently learned a new dish from my shifu, horsetail antler pine jelly soup. Are you interested? The ingredients are all imported from abroad, so it's a little expensive. But the taste is definitely better than the ones made by my master using domestic ingredients. The boss thought for a while and replied. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was blank. Aren't horsetail antler and pine stinger domestic ingredients? Boss Tan spread his hands. It used to be, but Australia applied ahead of time to make a soup made from these two ingredients as a cultural heritage, just as shameless as Nanhan. Everything belongs to other countries. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, then give me one. Anyway, if it didn't taste good, he wouldn't pay. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Boss Tan looked up at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Unfamiliar the first time, familiar the second time. He had seen this pattern of ordering food and asking questions many times. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't hide it anymore. With a flash of spirit light, that mask box appeared on the table with a duong sound. Boss, have you seen this before? Boss Tan didn't say anything, and just lowered his head to concentrate on processing the ingredients in his hands. He cut the horsetail antler into small pieces and the transparent pine stinger into thin shreds. After washing them in a strainer, he poured them into a clay pot, added some spices, and covered it with a lid. After doing all this, Boss Tan raised his head and stared at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Mind if I smoke? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shook his head, but secretly used spirit energy to control his nose hair and adjust it to filter mode. No one would have thought that this great death-courting senior didn't smoke. Furthermore, he had developed a small spell to control his nose hair himself, which could effectively prevent the harm of secondhand smoke. Boss Tan took a drag on his cigarette. To tell you the truth, this box was indeed made by a friend of mine. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's eyes instantly lit up. This was very important information. It was only recently that Boss Tan had started to care about the stone ghost mask. Although he had already chosen to retire, it was undeniable that the mask he and that little girl had made back then was causing a lot of instability in this world. Both the government and the light forces wanted to find the two masks and seal them, while the dark forces wanted to rely on the stone ghost mask to suddenly rise to prominence. It took a lot of effort to make this thing back then. Boss Tan sighed faintly. But I'm very sorry to tell you that the maker of this stone box has already passed away. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's eyes darkened. He really wanted to ask how on earth this person had died, but he felt that it would be a little rude to do so. Also, it wouldn't be very polite. He knew that this Boss Tan's identity definitely wasn't simple. That aura on him came and went. Most likely, this was also a great senior on a level that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't touch. Of course, this was just speculation. But grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was inexplicably confident in himself. His sixth sense had always been very accurate. Boss Tan stared at the stone box for a long time. It was obvious that he didn't want to reveal the reason for his friend's passing. He was silent, but still gave grenade-throwing Senior Immortal a warning. I advise you to give up on tracking him down. If this goes on, it won't be good for you or that songwriting genius friend of yours. That's not something you can touch. Boss Tan touched the knife scar on the right side of his face. Do you see this knife scar? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. Boss, does this injury look like it was caused by a magic weapon? It's easy to get started, but it's hard to get out. Sometimes, if you sink too deep into this muddy water, it's very hard to pull yourself out. Boss Tan said, I got this knife scar when I left the sect back then. At the time, the sect had just experienced a chaotic battle, and I got this knife scar during that chaotic battle. Speaking up to this point, Boss Tan felt a stabbing pain in his heart. This is a wound caused by a holy weapon. Given my realm at the time, even if my body was healed, I wouldn't be able to heal this knife scar. I've looked for a lot of beauty agencies over the years, but they were all useless. Back then, this old man was also a sect beauty. There were so many sect beauties waiting for me, and I walked the path of an idol. I also relied on my face to make a living. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, was this a knife wound? Oh, that's not it. Boss Tan shook his head like a rattle. When I was running away from the sect, I accidentally tripped and fell. My face just happened to hit the knife blade on the ground. Chapter 177. The destruction of Shadow Stream had in fact affected a lot of people. Ever since Ah Yu's death and Ah's was diagnosis as a vegetable, the lady of the castle seemed to have settled down in her office in that big building in the heart of the city. With major incidents happening one after another in Immortal Castle, she had too many things to deal with. Furthermore, almost every 10 minutes or so, someone would come to her office with the latest intelligence. The lady of the castle's office on the top floor was a presidential suite, complete with a bathroom and a bedroom. Early that morning, the lady of the castle woke up from her meditative state and felt a lot more refreshed. After one night, the dead brain cells from yesterday had been replenished. For cultivators, meditating was far more effective than ordinary people simply relying on sleep. When she opened the bedroom door, the documents on the desk had already piled up into a small mountain. There was a lot of information on the impact of Shadow Stream's destruction on Immortal Castle. After all, Immortal Castle and Shadow Stream had had a lot of private dealings over the years. Shadow Stream's sudden destruction naturally had an impact on Immortal Castle. But this wasn't the most important factor. After all, Immortal Castle and Shadow Stream were only partners, not dependent on each other. After searching through the large pile of information that had been delivered early in the morning for a while, the lady finally found a piece of intelligence that interested her. It was information on the investigation of the family in the small villa in the suburbs, on East Huang Road. The life signals of the two Immortal Castle cultivators whom the lady of the castle had sent out earlier had been cut off after they had entered the villa. After that day, the lady of the castle had started to have intelligence personnel investigate this family. She started reading from the beginning, word by word, for fear that she would miss some important clue. Unfortunately, the results almost made her flip the table. This was an ordinary family to begin with. The female head of the household was a housewife, and the male head was a web novelist. Their son was still in grade 1, and was only a foundation establishment student. There was also an old man in the family who already had one foot in the grave. The lady of the castle really couldn't figure out how a cultivator from such an ordinary family had been buried inside. Had she ***king run into a ghost? The lady's first reaction was that she had been tricked by the intelligence department. But with a working attitude as a leader, the lady continued to read the information carefully. After all of Immortal Castle's intelligence personnel had been specially trained by a retired old man from the Chaoyang district, who they had hired at a high price. Based on previous years of intelligence gathering, they had always been very reliable. According to a Immortal Castle intelligence agent, in March this year, Shadow Stream killers had launched a surprise attack on number 60 high school. In the end, the 3 young masters of burying love, who were ranked in the top 20 on the international list of killers and were known as the 3 young masters of burying love in the world of killers, had been killed in action along with more than 10 of their subordinates. Number 60 high school had escaped unscathed, and none of the students had been harmed at all. Second intelligence: in May this year, the elite students of number 60 high school were sent to number 59 high school to participate in the Spirit Sword exchange meet between the 2 schools. During the exchange meet, Gold Ribbon Killer Jiang Luiying, the younger sister of the master of Shadow Stream, attempted to launch a night attack on the eve of the exchange meet, but was ultimately captured. The third piece of information was about the Shadow Stream incident. At first glance, these 3 incidents centered on Shadow Stream seemed to be a logical connection, and there were no clues to be found. But the lady of the castle had still found some clues. She realized that all 3 incidents were related to that Foundation Establishment high school student in that desolate villa. It seemed that wherever this high school student went, Shadow Stream would follow him. But that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that every time Shadow Stream incident occurred, it could be perfectly resolved, which forced the lady to ponder the truth behind it. As for the third incident, it didn't seem to have anything to do with Wang Ling on the surface. But according to the Intelligence Department's information on the recently popular Director General of the General Administration of 100 Schools, Audiobook's relationship with this family actually wasn't simple. Putting these 3 incidents together, the lady couldn't help cupping her chin in her hands as she pondered deeply. Back then, this family had inadvertently found the stone ghost mask online, and Song Qingshu had been obstructed in every way he could when he went to buy it. If it really had been an ordinary family, they would never have been able to resist the temptation of money. After careful thought, the lady suddenly realized that there was a reason behind Immortal Castle's repeated attempts to seize the stone ghost mask in the last few months without any results. The lady took a deep breath. Somehow, she felt that she had really provoked a troublesome opponent this time. From the information she had gathered, Audiobook, Director General of the General Administration of 100 Schools, grenade-throwing senior immortal, the owner of the Cultivation Forum, plus this family's male owner, who was a well-known web novelist in the secular world, as well as several cultivation bigwigs who had expressed their support online after Mother Wang had been groped, this unremarkable little villa in the desolate suburbs had actually connected so many people who could shake the cultivation circle with just a shake of their legs. Who on earth was this Wang Ling? Was he really just an ordinary high school student? If the other party really was just a high school student, then, which almighty was standing behind him? The lady didn't dare think about it any further. At this point, she didn't have enough evidence to prove that there was something wrong with this family. At most, she could only guess that there was an unimaginable big shot behind them. The lady had already thought it through very clearly. They had all underestimated the people in this villa before, and had thought that this was just an ordinary family. They had underestimated their enemy again and again, which was why they had ultimately been defeated in every confrontation. In any case, next time, they would have to wait until they had a clear picture of the situation before making a move. The lady crossed her slender fingers and rested her chin in her hands. On her high nose bridge, a pair of gold-rimmed female glasses shone. A moment later, she picked up the phone and quickly dialed Gongsun Liancheng, the director of the intelligence department. Is this Director Gongsun? On the other end of the line came a slightly aged voice. Yes, lady. I've read all the information on that villa in the suburbs. Do a careful investigation of this villa. I want to know everything about the family's basic income and their daily interactions. Also, send someone to investigate a student, his classmates, and his teacher. I want you to give me all the information in one day. No problem, lady. What's the student's name? He's called, wait, what was his name again? F***K. What on earth was his name? The lady was very embarrassed. She had just read the information, how could she have forgotten? The corners of her mouth twitched a little awkwardly, and she looked at the information in her hands again, and then she was stunned. Because there was actually a lot of mosaics in her information now. Chapter 178. It was June 7th on Tuesday in the 7th week of the semester. A lot of things had actually happened that night. Wang Ling had upgraded his great shielding spell, and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Boss Tan had a long, sit-down talk in Midnight Dining Hall. By the end of their conversation, the bowl of Horsetail Velvet Pine Jelly Soup had gone cold. The final total cost, 419 HNY, this was probably the most expensive of the ordinary dishes in Boss Tan's shop. It was around daybreak when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took the stone box and set out on his way back to Wenxian Garden. At that time, the sky was already bright. The light penetrated through the gray clouds, and a few rays of light shone on the face of a man in white who was standing on a flying sword. The man's expression had not relaxed since he came out of the Midnight Dining Hall. Immortal Mansion, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal once again heard the name of this organization from Boss Tan. The last time he had heard of this organization was from a woman called Ah Yu who had been hired by Immortal Castle. At that time, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had made a preliminary assessment of this organization, and when he returned, he had specially searched through the list of light forces in Huaxiao Nation. Sure enough, he hadn't found any clues. This was a dark force that hadn't been listed as a formal sect by the governments of Huaxiao Nation or any other country, and was under the jurisdiction of the government. This was the most dangerous thing about this kind of force. And Boss Tan seemed to be an expert who had recognized the murky waters of Immortal Mansion and had retired from it. Although he didn't know the specific connection between Boss Tan and Immortal Mansion, his sixth sense told him that they might really run into trouble. On the way home, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pondered this in his heart. The popularity of the Shadow Stream incident died as quickly as it came. Whether it was the government officials or the melon-eating public, they actually only paid attention to this kind of large-scale gossip for a short while. During that time, online netizens enthusiastically posted comments in the spirit of paying attention to the facts every day, as if they wanted the world to be in chaos. There were even some malicious media outlets who embellished the original story and spread rumors in order to ride on the heat of the incident to increase their readership. But the facts proved that whether it was the Shadow Stream prison break this time, the soldiers who had sacrificed themselves in the government's rescue operation, or the plane crash in Huaxiao Nation a few years ago, netizens bitterly criticized and mourned over this incident. After this period of time, the attention would really go downhill, and eventually, no one would care about it anymore. Actually, Wang Ling had a deep understanding of this. After all, Mother Wang's groping a while ago had been a direct reflection of this situation. During that period of time, all the bloggers were popularizing women's guides on how to protect themselves from perverts. Talk was always faster than action. After that period of limelight, the perverts in public couldn't hold back anymore. On this day, the topic of conversation in Grade 1, Class 3 changed again. The school's military training successfully replaced the latest gossip. Furthermore, it was actually Tang Jingza and He Buffeng, the delinquent senior from number 59 high school, who brought the news together. After a few days of contact with number 60 high school, these two had assimilated relatively quickly, at least they were already mingling with the boys in class. But Wang Ling felt that these two guys had also been infected with a bad habit, and that was gossip. Needless to say, it was obvious that they had definitely stolen this habit from Master of Dopigua. Wang Ling had always felt that this was a disease more frightening than a virus. Gossip was contagious, and this really wasn't an alarmist. I got the news about the military training this time from a few buddies who are about to graduate from last year. During the morning self-study period, He Buffeng sat at his desk and waved a mysterious stack of documents in his hands. All the students in Grade 1, Class 3 crowded around him. Only Wang Ling sat alone in his seat and watched from a distance. Did you spend money? Master of Dopey was very curious. Not really. He Buffing shook his head. I just promised them that after they graduate, they can use their student IDs to go to my family's hospital for a free leg enhancement surgery, but this surgery is limited to boys, and it's the latest project that our hospital has developed through a patent application. To put it bluntly, this was a transaction. A leg enhancement surgery in exchange for information. That works? Super Chen was startled. From a hereditary point of view, height is determined at birth, just like a person's cultivation talent. Even cultivators have no way to improve their height through cultivation. Those leg enhancement pills on the market actually aren't as reliable as leg enhancement insoles, and they only last for half a month at most. Plus, they're very expensive. When he Buffing said this, Little Peanut silently lowered his head. But technology is now so advanced that it's actually not difficult to increase the height by 2 to 4 centimeters. Our family's surgery is pretty reliable. It's a permanent leg enhancement with no side effects. But you have to graduate from high school first, and make good use of the 2 years of seclusion, he Buffing said. Little Peanut was suddenly very interested. Then how do we do it? The specific procedure is, first, anesthetize them. Then find 2 burly men to break their legs, preferably with comminuted fractures. After that, we'll inject a leg enhancement fluid developed by our hospital into the broken bones, and then apply a German orthopedic Chinese medicine powder specially made by our hospital. He Buffing replied indifferently, that's right, so the most important part of the surgery is to break the legs. Everyone, he Buffing, also, the more broken the better, and the nerves can't be touched. The 2 burly men who break the legs have also been specially trained by our hospital. Super Chen covered his face and smiled bitterly. This is simply too brutal. So, this surgery is only suitable for boys. Girls' leg bones are thinner, so it's not easy to control your strength, he Buffing said. Dopigua, I just want to know, do the 2 people you exchanged information with know about this? He Buffing shrugged. Of course they don't. Dopigua, then when they find out the truth, won't you be in great danger? He Buffing patted Dopigua on the shoulder. Don't worry, by then, their legs will have already been broken. It was only at that moment that Wang Ling finally realized how terrifying this delinquent senior was. Getting down to business, he Buffing opened the information in his hands, which he had already read last night. Let me give you a brief explanation of the new military training this time. In addition to practicing military posture, there's also a survival contest in the team event. Feather Lin, a sand washing contest? Are we really going to play in the mud? It's a survival contest, not a sand washing contest, he Buffing rubbed his temples and continued to say, for this survival contest, all the students from the 6 schools participating in the military training will be placed on the same map. With 2 schools as one alliance, they will be divided into 3 alliances to carry out simulated combat training on the map. The last 10 survivors will win the competition. Chapter 179. In previous school military training, there had never been a military drill like this. This time, number 59 high school and number 60 high school, which had gathered all kinds of grievances, were finally going to stand on the same front against the enemy. Although there weren't many people who knew about this, thanks to Tang Jingza and He Buffing, grade 1, class 3 was the first to know about this survival contest, and they all looked a little eager to try it out. What are the specific rules? Someone asked He Buffing. The survival contest this time is a little different from the previous spirit sword exchange meet. Secondly, after entering the map, everyone will be empty-handed. Spirit swords and all magic treasures are forbidden. What we need to do is to collect magic treasures that are randomly distributed on the map, and then defeat people from other schools, He Buffing explained. Of course, whether the magic treasures are good or bad will all depend on luck. Speaking up to this point, Tang Jing's aside. So compared with the previous spirit sword exchange meet, the actual combat training this time is more of a test of adaptability. Of course, there's also a bit of luck involved. What if someone finds a pair of immortal shoes and then scurries all over the map? Or if they find a high-level immortal sword at the beginning and start a large-scale massacre, even we might not be able to do anything about it. Everyone, then who are our opponents this time? Asked Little Peanut. They're all from Peiyuan District. Prime Elevation High and Reliance Girls High are in one alliance, and Building Materials High and God Vision High are in another alliance, said Tang Jingza. Hearing the names of these high schools, Super Chen's eyes suddenly darkened. Even God Vision is participating. This is the key high school designated for the children of the Shao clan. But Dopigwa shook his head. I actually don't think this God Vision is the key. I have an uncle who works at God Vision High School who told me that the children of the Shao clan are actually just peripheral children. Prime Elevation High School's overall strength isn't much different from ours. Instead, the key is Reliance Girls High and this Building Materials High. Tang Jingza raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? I have an uncle who works as a security guard at Reliance Girls High and a PE teacher at Building Materials High. They told me a bit about it before, Dopigwa said solemnly. Dopigwa said seriously, this Reliance High School's overall level is very high. Their principal is the sect leader of the Earth-level Reliance sect, and is also known as the Reliance Principal. He is an expert in the art of earth and wood, and he can easily control all kinds of terrains. What about Construction Material High School? Dopigwa, that's Lin Xiaozong's school. It's also a key high school that Lin Xiaozong's father, Lin Sikong, invested in. Many members of the Lin family were studying there. The only thing special about them is that they are very rich. When everyone heard this, it suddenly dawned on them. No one might have any impression of Building Materials High School. However, speaking of Lin Xiaozong, this famous rich second generation, it could be said that everyone knew about him. Especially that fish-slaying sword, it could be said to be one of a kind. The most important thing was that this Lin Xiaozong not only had a good family background, but he was also very hardworking. In this year's second mock spirit sword exam, he ranked first overall. And this time, they had to deal with it. It was obvious that Lin Xiaozong would definitely do his best to give them pointers behind the scenes for the sake of his family's disciples' performance in the military training. It could be said that the military training this time was a challenge for both number 59 high school and number 60 high school. Even though both schools had been included in the promotion list of the key high schools in the city. However, whether or not he could level up in the end would depend on this battle. However, Wang Ling wasn't very interested in this competition. On the contrary, when he heard that spirit swords wouldn't be used in the actual combat training this time, he was relieved. He didn't want Jinka to go berserk again. When Wang Ling got home from school in the evening, he found that the pair of big white rabbit slippers at the entrance of the house were gone. Had Lai Mengmeng come? Wang Ling found it a little strange that the slippers had disappeared, because he hadn't sensed Lai Mengmeng's aura. Looking up, he saw a young man sitting on the sofa and chatting with Father Wang over tea. When he entered, Wang Ling could even hear the young man's demonic laughter. The moment Wang Ling saw the young man, his heart instantly went cold, because this person was actually Odd Zhua. Wang Ling couldn't help wanting to roar in his heart. Lai Mengmeng, your big white rabbit slippers have been stolen. When Odd Zhua saw Wang Ling, his eyes lit up, but his back was to Father Wang, so Father Wang didn't notice the strange look in his eyes. On the sofa, when Father Wang saw that Wang Ling had come home, he immediately introduced him cheerfully to Odd Zhua. Ling Ling, let me introduce you. This is the fan with the highest number of fans for my new book, and is also your senior, the youngest director of the General Administration of 100 schools. Just a while ago, he personally recaptured that killer who escaped from Songhai First Prison. Wang Ling, actually, Odd Zhua had wanted to visit the Wang family a long time ago. But he had always had the heart but not the guts. Thus, Odd Zhua thought that he had made ample preparations before coming to visit the Wang family this time. Before coming to the Wang family, Odd Zhua had asked grenade-throwing senior Immortal some questions, such as what his little Shifu liked, what his personality was like, and how to get along with him. Grenade-throwing senior Immortal had actually felt it was very strange when he had asked these questions. As far as he knew, Audiobook was Wang Ling's eldest true disciple. Why had this eldest disciple come to ask his Shifu questions instead? This had to be because the relationship between master and disciple wasn't harmonious. Thus, in the spirit of a peacemaker, grenade-throwing senior Immortal had imparted a lot of knowledge about Wang Ling to Audiobook. Now, Audiobook knew that Wang Ling was a person who liked to keep a low profile. So he usually didn't like to show his face in public. Furthermore, although he was Wang Ling's junior brother on the surface, the truth was that he was a big shot who had hidden himself very deeply. And it wasn't just Wang Ling. The people who had appeared in the Wang family's small villa were all great seniors hidden in the cultivation circle. Now, Wang Ling also knew that he had been betrayed by this grenade-throwing guy. He couldn't help sighing in his heart. Who would have thought that there would actually be a traitor among his few cultivation circle of friends? Wang Ling stared at Audiobook without saying anything for a long time, and his head hurt a little. Just as the air was about to freeze, Audiobook suddenly said to Father Wang, "Brother Wang, I also brought a gift this time." "Just come, why did you bring a gift?" Father Wang was a little embarrassed. "It's my duty." Audiobook took out his storage bag. He had prepared a pack of high-end cigarettes for Father Wang and a bottle of youthful makeup lotion for Mother Wang. Then, he took out a huge broccoli. Holding the broccoli, Audiobook felt a little proud in his heart. "I heard that old senior Wang especially likes broccoli. I bought this from a great senior at a high price." Finally, Audiobook rummaged around in his storage bag and took out a whole box of crispy noodle snacks of all kinds of different flavors. Wang Ling stared blankly at this box of crispy noodle snacks for a moment. Very good, he would accept this disciple. Chapter 180. It was June 8th on Wednesday in the 7th week of the semester. Today, Old Antiques Theory of History class started to talk about gossip as usual, but the content this time was a little different. In the past, the gossip was mostly related to the knowledge in the textbooks, but this time, Old Antique started to talk about the well-known killers on the international ranking list of killers based on the Shadow Stream incident. The Shadow Stream incident has been a hot topic in the last few months, and has attracted the attention of many municipal leaders. Today's class will be a safety education for everyone. Leaning against the lectern, Old Antique propped one elbow on it as he said unhurriedly, "Does anyone know anything about the killers on the international ranking list of killers?" It was dead silent below the lectern. The 3 Shadow Stream killers who died in our school were ranked in the top 20 of the international ranking list. The highest ranked one was ranked 13th. Speaking up to this point, Old Antique smiled. "But this group of people are all fish." "Fish?" Someone was puzzled. Old Antique shrugged. "The so-called fish here are just miscellaneous fish. Everyone, forgive me for being blunt, in my opinion, those who aren't ranked in the top 10 on the international ranking list of killers are all miscellaneous fish." Old Antique smiled slightly. His words caused a burst of laughter below the lectern, but Wang Ling felt a little confidence in Old Antique's words. He had witnessed Old Antique's strength with his own eyes, and had always felt that this theory of history teacher's true identity wasn't ordinary. To Wang Ling, Old Antique had always been a mysterious man with a story. In fact, ever since he had come into contact with Third Saint and learned about Killer Taoist, Wang Ling had actually been a little suspicious about Old Antique's identity. But could Old Antique's true identity be that expert who was ranked first on the international ranking list of killers? Today, I'm going to talk about the top 10 killers on the international ranking list of killers. Speaking up to this point, a mysterious expression appeared on Old Antique's face. On the international ranking list of killers, the master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luiyue, is ranked 6th. She hasn't appeared since the destruction of Shadow Stream's headquarters, but I don't think she's really dead. Now, let's sort through the rankings from the bottom to the top. The killer ranked 10th is codenamed Night Rain Kidney Trouble. Night Rain. Kidney trouble? Well, let's talk about the origin of Night Rain Kidney Trouble. Legend had it that this assassin's family was rather poor when he was young and did not have the resources to cultivate. That was why he embarked on a path of no return. He harvested kidneys and sold them for money. the specific price was determined by the realm of the cultivator. The higher the realm, the higher the price of a kidney. This person had once caused a reign of terror in the Jianghu, and countless cultivators had their kidneys cut off by him. Therefore, there is another name for it, the kidney hunter. Hearing this, the students in the class couldn't help but tremble. This was only the 10th place, and he was already so abnormal. Then, what kind of monstrous level would the people above him be? Old Antique continued with his introduction. The 9th killer, code name, Little Cold Hands. This person was born with a strange physique. He was born with cold hands. Every time you carry out a mission, you always look harmless and find an opportunity to pretend to fall. Why did he pretend to fall? Everyone was confused. Of course, he was looking for an opportunity to shake hands with the target of the assassination. By pretending to fall, he would seize the opportunity to shake hands with the target, which would make him look more natural. Old Antique said meaningfully, once you shake hands with this person, the special cold air in his body will instantly invade your internal organs, freezing and paralyzing you for a short period of time. Of course, this state only lasts for a short time, but as a professional assassin, this little bit of time is more than enough to assassinate a person. Back then, the cultivators in the cultivation Jianghu who fell victim to this person were completely unable to react until the moment they were killed. The 8th killer, code name, Steamed Bun Invasion. This killer is a little special. Every time before an assassination mission, he will leave behind a meat bun with a bloody steamed bun. Compared with the previous 2 killers, this person's most formidable aspect is that he can appear and disappear unpredictably. His chi concealment technique is extremely powerful and frightening. The 7th killer, code name, 1-inch ash. This killer is a little special. The weapon he uses for assassination is 1-inch ash. Rumor has it that he has refined his own hair into a magic treasure. Whenever he makes a move, he will definitely take down his opponent. Until today, he has never failed. Refining his hair into a magic treasure? Hearing this, Wang Ling couldn't help frowning. He felt that this technique was a little similar to that of Zhua and Yu from Immortal Mansion. I won't go into too much detail on the 6th master of Shadow Stream. Next, I'll focus on the top 5 killers. Old Antique stealthily took out a spicy strip from his pocket and put one in his mouth. I believe that after the Shadow Stream incident in the last few days, everyone has heard about the 4th and 5th killers from various sources. These 2 killers are a famous couple in the international circle of killers, and are nicknamed Elders Gold and Silver. One is Elder Gold and the other is Elder Silver, and both are very good at using poisons. Are these poisons useful on cultivators? Of course they are. Old Antique nodded. Everyone has taken pharmacology classes, and knows that common poisons have no effect on cultivators. For ordinary people, whether it's the nerve venom of a venomous snake or the highly toxic sap of some plants, just a little bit is enough to kill them. But for cultivators, no matter how much of these poisons they ingest, they can ultimately use spirit energy to force them out of their pores. But Elders Gold and Silver's poisons are more flashy, and come in all kinds. Furthermore, only they can neutralize them. As far as I know, they have also developed a new kind of poison. Someone couldn't help asking, what kind of poison is it? Old Antique replied, it's a highly toxic poison that can cause confusion in the nerves. The victim will quickly become feminine in a very short period of time and become very seductive, and very annoying. Elders Gold and Silver once secretly used this poison on the original 4th place on the ranking list of killers, codenamed 5th Saw of the National Server. Someone asked, and then? Old Antique shrugged. It said that this 5th Saw of the National Server went crazy overnight. That night, he broke into the homes of the other killers and shouted at the top of his lungs, I don't care, I'm the most handsome, I'm your little cutie. Everyone in Grade 1, Class 3 felt their scalps go numb when they heard this. In the end, by the time this killer was found, he was already dead. His kidneys were gone, his body showed signs of being frozen, and there were strands of hair on his neck. Furthermore, there was a bloody meat bun next to his body. Everyone, that's right, this killer who was originally 5th on the ranking list was killed by his peers. After that, Elder's gold and silver's ranking rose. Just like that, one ranked 4th and the other ranked 5th. Chapter 181. It had been a full 3 days since Shadow Stream's command post had been destroyed, and it had taken Jiang Luo 3 days in the secret underground room to adjust her body's condition. This master of Shadow Stream made a preliminary calculation. After this incident, he had already lost at least 600 years of cultivation. Even if that clone made of spirit clay had been completely destroyed, as long as she could retrieve it in the end, she would be able to preserve her realm. Unfortunately, that damn cat hadn't given her any leeway at all, and had directly blown up the clone. The command post had been destroyed, her younger sister had been imprisoned again, and even her assistant Immortal had been arrested and imprisoned. The Shadow Stream group, which had shaken the world of killers in the past, no longer existed. At that moment, Jiang Luo was a little disheartened. Furthermore, she was well aware that now that Shadow Stream had fallen to this state, it was likely that all the killers on the list were doing everything they could to find her whereabouts, whether it was 1-inch Ash who was ranked 7th, Steamed Bun Invasion who was ranked 8th, Little Cold Hands who was ranked 9th, or Night Rain Kidney Bother who was ranked 10th. All of them now had the strength to take her head, and it would be as easy as turning over a hand for them to replace her. In the rankings. What on earth should she do next? Jiang Luo's eyes suddenly darkened. Long ago, Jiang Luo had already prepared for the worst, but she had never thought that this day would come so quickly and so suddenly. But although the situation was bad, at least her real body had survived. In fact, if it hadn't been for that spirit clay clone, she would have already lost her last chance to turn things around. She was the one who sealed the stone ghost mask box in the command center. Jiang Luo knew that the stone ghost mask was a pair of twin magic treasures, so the moment she had taken it out, she had sealed it in a chaotic space, cutting off the resonance between the twin magic treasures and exposing their location. She was well aware that there was still a chance for her to turn things around. That stone ghost mask was her last bargaining chip. As long as she was still alive, elsewhere, Old Antique was still continuing his theory of history lesson. He had already introduced most of the top 10 killers on the international list of killers, except for the last 3. Old Antique rested both hands on the lectern and assumed the posture of a storyteller. Earlier, I explained to the students the killers ranked 4th to 10th on the list. Now, let me talk about the top 3 assassins. Speaking up to this point, Old Antique narrowed his eyes slightly with a calm and composed expression on his face. According to what I know, since the top 100 killers on the international list were announced, there have been more than 3,600 changes in the rankings. However, there were 3 positions that had never changed. They were the top 3 assassins. In the assassin ranking, many assassins had publicly declared war on these 3 assassins. In the short span of a year, more than 300 assassins had challenged the top 3 assassins of their respective top assassins. But these challengers were all killed the next day. Basically, one of them died. Everyone, thus, to reduce turmoil on the list. From then on, the killers made a pact among themselves. He was only allowed to challenge an assassin who was 1 rank higher than him, and it was forbidden to challenge someone of a higher rank. Therefore, only the Gold-Silver brothers have the qualifications to issue a challenge to the third person. Teacher, have the Gold and Silver elders attempted the challenge before? Someone could not help but raise his hand and ask. Of course they have. Old Antique nodded. As far as I know, Gold Antique and his wife have joined forces to challenge them more than 20 times. But they all ended in failure. The third-ranked killer is codenamed Bandit Evil. He is world-famous for his world-shaking thieving skills. It's said that anyone who fights him will have their magic treasures stolen without them noticing. Before the Killer's Pact was established, Steamed Bun Invasion challenged Bandit Evil. In the end, all his bloody buns were stolen on the day of the challenge, and he fled without a fight. Little Cold Hands fell to the ground and tried to blackmail Bandit Evil, but all his clothes were stolen, not even his underwear. In the end, he could only get up from the ground and flee without a fight. He was almost charged with blackmail and being a hooligan. The most tragic person was 1-Inch Ash. When 1-Inch Ash declared war on Bandit Evil back then, when he woke up the next day, he found that all his hair was gone. Bandit Evil even applied a layer of hair loss cream. So, I think everyone has already guessed why Gold Antique Old Silver failed. Old Antique said lightly, every time Gold Antique was about to poison Bandit Evil, they would always find that the poison on them was gone. At first, they even suspected that they had Alzheimer's and had forgotten to bring it with them. It could only be said that Old Antique was in the end Old Antique. With just a few words, he had meticulously gone through all the gossip about these killers on the international ranking list of killers, who struck fear into the hearts of the world. At that moment, the atmosphere in the classroom had already been completely stirred up. Old Antique looked at the time and saw that there was still time to spare, so he prepared to continue talking about Bandit Evil, the third killer on the ranking list. In passing, he would also spread the gossip about the last two top killers. It was very obvious that Old Antique was also in the mood for gossip, and he wasn't quite done yet. The second killer on the ranking list is codenamed Cold Wind. He's publicly acknowledged as a powerful killer on the international ranking list of killers. As far as I know, he's a special forces soldier trained by Huaxiao Nation to carry out assassination missions for the country. He's helped our nation escape the danger of foreign spies stealing our secrets many times, and his whereabouts are unknown. In order to carry out a mission, he once single-handedly challenged a mercenary army sent by a Western cultivation country, and returned unscathed and completely annihilated. Speaking up to this point, Old Antique couldn't help sighing with emotion in his heart. A lot of the time, these killers on the ranking list give us a cold and ruthless image. But among them, there are also revered heroes, and Cold Wind is one of them. One of them? Is there anyone else? Someone noticed the hidden meaning in Old Antique's words. Of course there is. Old Antique nodded quickly. The killer I'm going to talk about next is a legendary figure who has always been number one since the ranking list was established, and whose position has never changed. Killer Taoist, codenamed Teacher Killer. Hearing this resounding name, Wang Ling finally couldn't help raising his eyes. Killer Taoist, he was hearing this person's name once again. Third Saint, who had betrayed Immortal Castle previously, had regarded him as this Killer Taoist. Chapter 182. It was still June 8th, around 10:00 in the morning. Old Antique was still in class, and Jiang Luyue, who had spent 3 days recuperating from the backlash caused by the destruction of her spirit clay, had gone into seclusion early. When she walked out of the apartment's basement, the sunlight was a little dazzling when it shone on her face. Jiang Luyue knew that all the killers on the ranking list of killers were looking for her. She had to be especially vigilant against that 1-Inch Ash in particular. As long as she was killed, all the killers at the bottom of the ranking list would move up one place. However, it would be far from easy to find her in this vast sea of people. The basement she used for seclusion was located in the center of Jinghua City. It was a parking lot, and at the very end of the basement was an abandoned convenience store. However, the owner of the convenience store had run off with his sister-in-law with the money, and the property management had later rented it out. Back then, Jiang Luyue had directly bought this place for her seclusion, and had paid the rent and deposit for 50 years in one go. This had been an absolutely brilliant plan. Cultivators were in fact very particular about choosing a seclusion location. Many cultivators who were particular about seclusion would choose a spirit eye. A spirit eye was formed naturally from the spirit chi of heaven and earth. It was equivalent to a natural spirit gathering array, and its effect was much better than that of an artificially created array, as it could continuously replenish the spirit energy needed for seclusion. Apart from looking for a spirit eye, some cultivators would also hire a diviner to tell their fortunes. In short, the seclusion location had to be a place with good feng shui. Once it was confirmed, the necessary protective measures would be taken to prevent anyone from disturbing the seclusion. But this abandoned convenience store that Jiang Luyue had chosen didn't have a spirit eye, let alone feng shui. Squeezed into this completely inconspicuous corner, it could be said that it couldn't be more low-key. No one would ever think that the Grand Master of Shadow Stream would be hiding in such a small corner, What Jiang Luiyue needed to do now was to seize every moment she had to restore her realm. There was a river of sewage on the outskirts of Jinghua City, where the city's wastewater would eventually converge. It would then be degraded and absorbed by a purifier before being redistributed to a water plant for recycling. When Jiang Luiyue arrived, it was already noon. It was very hot in Jinghua City at this hour, and given the stench of sewage from the river, almost no one passed by. It's here. Back then, after Jiang Luiyue had taken out the stone ghost mask, she had asked her younger sister, Jiang Luiying, to find an opportunity to throw it into this river of dirty water and seal it. Jiang Luiyue used the turtle breath spell to stand in front of this river of dirty water, her gaze fixed on its surface. The stench here was overwhelming. If she came here without preparation, she would definitely faint because the 5 senses of a cultivator were much stronger than that of an ordinary person. She raised her hand, and a ray of spiritual light appeared at her fingertips. Then, with a buzz, it shot toward the surface of the water. Back when she had sealed the stone ghost mask in this river, Jiang Luiyue had set up a spell to undo the seal, which was similar to a password red envelope mechanism. The way to undo the seal was to inject her own spirit energy and reawaken the seal. After Jiang Luiyue injected her spirit energy into the river of sewage, ripples instantly appeared in the originally calm and still river. Hua hua hua, layer upon layer of water surged up like a geyser. Jiang Luiyue raised her eyes and saw the spirit pouch at the center of the waves. The spirit pouch still had the yellow waterproof talisman she had stuck on it back then. With a wave of her hand, the spirit pouch above the geyser immediately came to her. After so many years, the stone ghost mask she had obtained from a gang of grave robbers was finally going to see the light of day again. There were many legends about the stone ghost mask, but Jiang Luiyue considered herself a very cautious person. She hadn't wanted to use the stone ghost mask to take the so-called cultivation shortcut, but now that things had come to this, she couldn't think of any other way to turn things around. Frowning slightly, Jiang Luiyue opened the spirit pouch, and black smoke immediately whizzed out of it. The smoke lingered in the air as it let out a strange laugh. Junior, my venerable self thought that you had already forgotten about me when you sunk me into this water back then. After so many years, why has your realm regressed? It looks like you haven't been doing so well. Now that things have come to this, I have no other way out, Jiang Luiyue said softly, her eyes dark. If you had known earlier, you would have cooperated with my venerable self earlier. If you had made the decision back then, you would never have fallen to this state. The stone ghost mask in the black smoke laughed continuously. What, have you figured it out now? You should know what it means to cooperate with my venerable self, right? Jiang Luiyue, back then, Lord Devil Emperor was researching a spell to counter the great demon sealing wave spell, but in the end, he accidentally messed up and sealed himself inside. Lord Devil Emperor's so-called cooperation is nothing more than to borrow external strength to come out into the world again. Devil Emperor Gua Pai. What the hell? That's how you know? The stone ghost's face immediately flushed red. This was too shameful. Jiang Luiyue, Lord Devil Emperor's deeds have already been recorded in the history books, and are now a mandatory test point every year. Devil Emperor Gua Pai, after a moment of silence, Jiang Luiyue raised her eyes. There's just one thing I don't understand. In the cultivation circle, there are countless people who want to obtain the stone ghost mask. Why doesn't Senior think of a way to cooperate with them? Hee, what's the use of trying to obtain me? I only cooperate with those who are fated with me. In the hundreds of years that I was sealed away, you were the first person to find me. Unfortunately, we hadn't reached an agreement back then, and you weren't even willing to listen to my venerable self for more than a few words before you sealed me in this smelly river. Devil Emperor Gua Pai smiled slightly. I can help you with 2 things, but only if you let me borrow your body for a period of time. During this period, your soul will be sealed away in the stone ghost mask. Soul swap? Jiang Luiyue frowned. This is the only way I can think of at the moment. Sealed in the stone ghost mask, Devil Emperor Gua Pai said, of course, don't worry. You've helped me before, so I won't leave you alone after the deed is done. Once I find a suitable body, I'll let go of your body. Of course this junior believes Lord Devil Emperor's words. Jiang Luiyue smiled bitterly. Now that things had come to this, it actually didn't matter to her that she had lost everything. Furthermore, this junior believes that given Lord Devil Emperor's valiant demeanor in the past, he wouldn't lower himself to stay in a woman's body for so long. Although there's a special group of people on the market now called crossdresser big shots. Crossdresser big shots? What's that? Devil Emperor Guo Pai hadn't been in contact with the outside world for a very long time, and felt that he was a little out of line. Jiang Luiyue, a group of men who like to wear women's clothes, and who also attract a lot of people's attention, Devil Emperor Guo Pai. He hadn't been out for over 1,000 years, had the world become so scary? Chapter 183. If you agree to cooperate with me, you can ask me anything. My venerable self can satisfy you. The stone ghost mask's voice came from within the black fog. Jiang Luiyue frowned. Although she said she trusted him, she still had some doubts about this so-called cooperation in her heart. Who knew if this Devil Emperor Guo Pai had become a pervert after being sealed in the mask for more than 1,000 years? But Jiang Luiyue had no other choice now. Choosing to trust him was her only option, and she could take this opportunity to probe this Devil Emperor's true strength. This was the devil who had been famous all over the world back then, and whom Huaxiao Nation had exhausted all its national resources to eliminate. Any condition? Jiang Luiyue asked softly after staring at the black fog for a few seconds. Of course. Devil Emperor Guo Pai laughed. There's nothing I can't do. Then can you help me recover my original realm? My spirit clay clone was destroyed, and I lost 600 years of cultivation. Jiang Luiyue's eyes darkened. As long as it's not an internal cause, it can be recovered. Even my venerable self can't do anything about those who lost their cultivation because of a cultivation deviation. Your situation is an external cause, and my venerable self has a way to help you recover. But it will still take time. If you want to regain 600 years of cultivation, it will take at least a year. A year? Jiang Luiyue's expression shook. Shrinking 600 years into a year would greatly shorten the time needed to recover her realm. This recovery technique doesn't require you to go into seclusion and can be cultivated at any time. My venerable self can teach it to you now. You can try it for a month first to see if my venerable self's words are true. Tell me your second condition. Jiang Luiyue was the only one who could hear strange laughter in the black fog. Lord Devil Emperor should have already guessed that since I chose to cooperate. I've already burned my boats. I will immediately learn this recovery technique and cultivate it. In the meantime, I hope Lord Devil Emperor can help me with the second matter. I want revenge. Of course. Actually, saving time is good for both you and me. But my venerable self is currently sealed and can't come out. What do you think about revenge? Devil Emperor Guo Pai asked. I only hope that Lord Demon Sovereign can help me persuade a few people. Jiang Luiyue cupped her fists at the black fog and said indifferently, there are a few people on the world's ranking list of killers who have been looking for me. Number 7 Killer 1-inch Ash, number 8 Steamed Bun Invasion, number 9 Little Cold Hands and number 10 Night Rain Kidney Bother. Hee, you want to kill me with a borrowed knife? In the black smoke, Devil Emperor Guo Pai laughed. My venerable self didn't expect that the current cultivation world would actually have a killer list, but why don't you just look for the top few on the list? Jiang Luiyue, I can't find any traces of those people for the time being. However, I'm sure that these 4 people are doing everything they can to find me. As long as they kill me, their ranking will move up by 1 place. Devil Emperor Guo Pai, so that's how it is, now, as long as you spread the news, it'll save us the trouble of looking for them. Is Lord Devil Emperor confident in persuading these people to work for us? Jiang Luiyue asked. They're just a few insignificant juniors. Back when I was talking and laughing with the 10 founding generals of Huaxiao Nation, they were still drinking milk, weren't they? Just focus on drawing them out, and don't worry, leave the rest to my venerable self. Devil Emperor Guo Pai sneered. Then I'll have to trouble you, Devil Emperor. Jiang Luyue cupped her fists in a salute. It's a mutually beneficial cooperation, there's no need to thank me. As soon as she said that, the black fog around the stone ghost mask instantly retracted, and it returned to Jiang Luyue's hand. By the way, who are you going to take revenge on? A school. Jiang Luyue gripped the stone ghost mask tightly. I'm going to kill everyone in that school, leaving not a single person alive. Everyone had gained a lot from today's history lesson. Old Antique's understanding of the top 10 killers was far greater than anyone could imagine. They couldn't help but wonder whether Old Antique had been in the country's intelligence department before. Old Antique had already shared dozens of pieces of gossip about Killer Taoist. He had even talked about what color underpants Killer Taoist liked to wear as if it was true. The people in class had all thought that Old Antique was just bragging, but as someone who had really been tricked by him, Wang Ling believed that what he had said was true. This was the #1 killer on the international list of killers. A figure who had once caused a ruckus in the cultivation world. With just a few words from Old Antique, he had been reduced to a strange uncle. Everyone had thought that Killer Taoist was a cold-blooded killer, but in Old Antique's mouth, he was actually a killer who carried out justice and punished evil. Furthermore, he had a special fetish, and that was wearing flowery underpants. Now, Wang Ling really didn't understand. He had once suspected that Old Antique was Killer Taoist, but if that really was the case, who would be so bold as to expose their little-known secrets to the public? Thus, Old Antique's identity had once again become a cloud of doubt for Wang Ling. At the end of school that evening, apart from a few patrolling security guards and a few teachers who had stayed behind to mark homework and teach students, there was also an unexpected person who had stayed behind. It was already dark, and Old Antique's broad figure swayed as he arrived on the school rooftop and gazed into the sky. At this point, Old Antique should have already left school. He had always been punctual at work, and was particular about going to work on time and getting off work on time. He wouldn't waste a single second, but today, for the first time ever, he had come to the rooftop. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared behind him. It was like a beam of light, and in the blink of an eye, it appeared behind him. It raised a hand and a cold blade stabbed directly at the back of Old Antique's head. It was so fast that it was impossible to see its movements clearly, like a shadow of light. But Old Antique's face was as calm as an ancient well. With a twist of his hand, he directly caught the blade between his fingers, and with a crack, the dagger shattered. Old Antique turned around and clapped his hands. Your accuracy has improved a lot, but your strength is still lacking. Standing in the dark, the person sighed. Teacher, you're still as strong as ever. Old Antique looked at this person and narrowed his eyes slightly. I have a feeling that something big is going to happen soon. Indeed, there's been a lot of unrest in the killer circle recently. A lot of people are looking for the whereabouts of the master of Shadow Stream, the person in the dark replied. Old Antique narrowed his eyes slightly. My students may be in danger, so I hope you and your senior brother can keep an eye on those people's movements for the time being. If anyone tries to harm my students, get rid of them as soon as possible. Very well, teacher. The person in the dark nodded, but then looked a little troubled. But teacher, senior brother's whereabouts are uncertain. I'm afraid I won't be able to find him, and even if I find him, I might not be able to shout at him. As soon as he said this, spirit light flashed in Old Antique's hand, and he tossed something into the person's hand. The person in the dark was instantly startled. This is, Old Antique, this is your senior brother's floral underpants. When he challenged me to a duel back then, I picked it up along the way. The person in the dark, Old Antique, hang this underpants on your drying rack at home, he'll show up right away. Chapter 184. On June 9th, Song Qing-shu, who was officially working as a steward in grenade-throwing senior Immortal's villa, discovered that the hawthorn seed had already sprouted. Although it was just a sapling, once it was nurtured in this spirit soil, the hawthorn tree would start to grow 10 times or even dozens of times faster. Grenade-throwing senior Immortal had created his own spirit soil, which could provide spirit plants with 100 times more nutrition than the soil in the outside world, thus speeding up their growth. This was spirit soil that could even revive a cooked broccoli, let alone a mere hawthorn tree. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had always felt that his spirit soil was the most representative of all his research. It was also the crucial step that would become the father of hybrid spirit plants in the cultivation world in the future. No one knew what would happen to the hawthorn tree after it grew up, or whether the girl who had played in the mud with Boss Tan back then would fulfill her promise. But whoever started the trouble had to end it. Looking at the clues they had so far, this girl was the only breakthrough. Of course, even grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't have imagined it. As twin magic treasures, the other stone ghost mask was in the hands of the master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luiyue. In fact, the problem they were facing now was even more complicated. It was no longer as simple as sealing the stone ghost mask, because the leader of the Gua Pai army back then, Devil Emperor Gua Pai, had already reached an agreement with Jiang Luiyue to return to the world. In the last 2 days, Wang Ling had noticed that an image kept flickering in his mind. It was very brief, and even he could only get a rough idea of it. In the image, the man was sitting in a pool of blood against a wall, his white clothes stained with blood. His head was lowered and his eyelids were drooping as he gasped for breath. This was the foresight ability of the heavenly eye, which was more direct than a simple twitching eyelid warning. They were both early warnings, but the difference was that the eyelid warning was aimed at Wang Ling and foretold that something in the future would affect him, while the heavenly eye's foresight was aimed at the people around Wang Ling. The foresight image of the heavenly eye would usually flicker 1 to 3 times, and the image would become clearer and clearer. Currently, the image had flickered twice, and Wang Ling could clearly see the scene behind the man and the blood all over the ground. However, he would probably have to wait until the next time to see the man's face clearly. In the bedroom, a breeze blew through Wang Ling's hair. He raised his eyes slightly to look at the skylight, feeling a little uneasy. Actually, at that moment, Wang Ling already had an idea. On the other side, after Jiang Luiyue and Devil Emperor Gua Pai had reached an agreement, they officially started their cohabitation life with the convenience store they had used for seclusion as their main base of operations. After a night of teaching, Jiang Luiyue had already more or less mastered the restoration technique. When the recovery spell was activated, Jiang Luiyue could clearly sense a torrent that originated from outside the universe. After a detailed understanding, Jiang Luiyue understood that this was a spell that directly absorbed the source of spirit energy from beyond the heavens to speed up the recovery of a wounded realm. It was also a forbidden spell, and its drawback was that it would shorten one's lifespan. A year of lifespan in exchange for a year of cultivation. Jiang Luiyue couldn't help laughing at herself in her heart. Although this was a forbidden technique, it unexpectedly had the law of conservation of cultivation energy in it. A soul formation cultivator's lifespan was 2,000 years, but if she used the recovery technique to restore her cultivation base, she would lose 600 years of her lifespan. But Jiang Luiyue was well aware that she had no other choice. After running the recovery spell's basic heart sutra for 2 days in a row, Jiang Luiyue felt that she could use it even more smoothly than before. Next to her, Devil Emperor Gua Pai used Jiang Luiyue's wristwatch to look up information. It had taken Jiang Luiyue a long time to teach him how to use the wristwatch. Old people were usually slower to absorb new things. Because he was trapped in the stone ghost mask and couldn't turn pages, all Devil Emperor Gua Pai could do at the moment was release a cloud of black fog to speak. Thus, the wristwatch's built-in voice control function was very useful at this time. Through continuous voice inquiries, Devil Emperor Gua Pai was also able to learn about Huaxiao Nation's current development situation. Nowadays, even immortal swords have to be licensed, and there's even a limit on odd and even numbers. When my venerable self returns to the world and dominates the world, I'll immediately get rid of this lousy rule. Ah, this 4-wheeled machine is pretty cool. When will my venerable self get a few of them to drive? Jiang Luiyue was already starting to get used to this series of exclamations. At the very beginning, Jiang Luiyue had wondered if she had brought back a country bumpkin, but after thinking about it carefully, she felt that this Devil Emperor Gua Pai was also a pitiful person. After all, this old devil had been trapped for 1,000 years, and this was his first time coming into contact with advanced technology in the human world. While Jiang Luiyue was sighing in her heart, there was suddenly a knock on the door of the convenience store, and an unfamiliar man's voice came from the doorway. "Hello. Is anyone here? Your takeout is here. Takeout? Jiang Luiyue had a suspicious expression on her face. In the black fog, Devil Emperor Guo Pai smiled. My venerable self ordered this. I saw that there's an app called Rice Ball Takeout in your wristwatch, and there's actually so much food in it. Jiang Luiyue, I thought that at Lord Devil Emperor's level, you wouldn't care about good food at all. Devil Emperor Guo Pai, cultivators can go several days without eating or drinking because of the spirit energy of heaven and earth. But it's very normal to have good food. In the past, in order to save money for their sects, those old-school cultivation sects tricked their disciples into not eating. This is wrong. Jiang Luiyue, Devil Emperor Guo Pai, aren't you also injured? You need to rely on something to replenish your nutrition, only then will it help you recover. Jiang Luiyue. But senior, it seems that you can't eat in your current state. Devil Emperor Guo Pai swiftly replied, you don't need to worry about that. Go and help my venerable self open the door. Jiang Luiyue suspiciously went to the door. When she opened the door, she saw a little brother in a yellow takeout uniform standing respectfully at the door with 4 big square boxes in his hands. Hello, these are the takeout you ordered. There are 200 pairs of insanely spicy chicken wings in total. She had just taken the boxes when she saw a black fog swiftly rush out of the convenience store with a whoosh. The little brother had no time to react at all. The stone ghost mask directly latched onto his face, and the hooks on both sides of the mask directly pierced into his face. 2 minutes later, Devil Emperor Guo Pai, who had completed the soul swap, stood up in this little brother's body. He took off the mask and shook hands, feeling a little emotional in his heart. It had been too long since he had experienced what it was like to have a physical body. Unfortunately, this body also had a very big flaw. It was only at the foundation establishment stage. It could stay inside for at most half an hour before it had to return to the stone ghost mask. Of course, all of this was no longer important. At that moment, all of Devil Emperor Guo Pai's gaze was focused on the 4 boxes of insanely spicy chicken wings. Staring at the 4 boxes of chicken wings in Jiang Luiyue's hands, this old devil who had been trapped for 1,000 years couldn't help swallowing and even choking on his words. I've been locked up for more than 1,000 years, and I haven't even been able to eat a chicken leg. This time, I can finally eat meat. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.